Okay, we're live. Hold on, I gotta get some water because my throat is kind of dry. It's that time of the year. It's January. It's after CES. There's not a lot going on. Okay. Alright, let's finish this domain. I'm trying to farm up some Primo gems so we can pull for Al Haytham and Yao Yao. But I really think that I'm probably going to take a break from this game after either the next banner or, I don't know, just feel like I'm just not feeling the whole Genshin Impact thing right now. I think this is where we started. But I don't know. I keep thinking about Hogwarts Legacy. There's like all this weird drama. I'm probably not going to talk about that on this stream with that game. I don't really know what the deal is. All I know is I am going to be playing that game. What happened here? And we are going to be streaming it. What do we do? What is that? Oh, that damages me. Ooh. Alright, let's do it. Let's get him. The one combo didn't finish him? Alright. So I see we have concurrent viewers. We're going to talk about Hogwarts Legacy. The final system requirements were revealed recently. And I don't know, I feel like right now, I wish that game would come out. It's like, we gotta wait, what, like 3.5 weeks? For Hogwarts Legacy? You know the thing about, you know recently when I was reading up on Hogwarts Legacy, I learned that the 4 houses of Hogwarts, so, you know, like Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin, those 4 houses are actually, they align to different temperaments. So you guys know about the temperaments. There's temperaments, there's personality types. Temperaments, there's like 4 main ones, or 4 primary ones. There's the controllers, the sanguine, the thinkers, and there's the supporters. The supporters are also oftentimes called healers or feelers, I think. But anyway, I found that interesting, that the houses in Hogwarts actually correspond to the 4 primary temperaments. So, for example, Slytherin is typically the controller type. The controller type temperament, also known as the dominant temperament. Usually, they're, you know, those type of people with that sort of temperament, they tend to be more, how to say it in a positive light? Like, they tend to be more, taking charge of things, you know, a natural leader, potentially. But there's also a lot of negative aspects of that temperament type. That's usually why in the Harry Potter series, for instance, a lot of the villains were from Slytherin. But I think, like, ambitious is another way to describe, like, a Slytherin. But there's also, like, Ravenclaw is typically the thinker type. Hufflepuff is a supporter type. And then the sanguine or the entertainer type is Gryffindor. So it's like Gryffindor is usually... Wait, was I supposed to get... I don't think I was supposed to get off of that. Oh, wait. I don't have the thing for that. I think I messed it up. I'll have to go back. But I'm thinking, like, I wanted to play a different game. I might play Valkyrie Elysium. I know the game title in the description says Valkyrie Elysium. Wait a minute, why do I have... Oh. If I go in there, is there like another place I could go? I didn't open that door, did I? Or is this where I came from? Hey, I can't... I didn't figure out how to open this door? Oh man, I missed out on something. I gotta figure out... How do I open that? What? What did I do? I don't even know how I opened that. Is it because I have the thing on? I'm not sure what I did. Like, how did I solve that? Was it her Nahida's power? I don't understand what I did. Well, we can get out of here now. Oh dear, I missed the elevator. I'm pretty sure that was the only room that I wasn't in. Apparently that's all I need to do. I guess I had to have the nature circle around me to get access to that. And what? Somehow I fell? Okay. The one game that I've been thinking of comparing Hogwarts Legacy to is Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. Because that game had a school setting, but I really don't think, like, if I make more comparisons between Persona 5 and Hogwarts Legacy, I might be setting myself up for disappointment, because I really don't think Hogwarts Legacy... I could be wrong, but I don't think Hogwarts Legacy is going to... the emphasis on characters, like the characters' relationships, I don't think that's going to be like a thing. Whoa. I could be completely wrong, though. Oh boy. Did I get the top one? No. Ha! Alright, that's what I wanted to happen earlier. Whoa, that big one in the air just like dropped. Wow. Okay, because I wanted the Primo Gems. The whole point is try to farm up Primo Gems in this game. That's the name of the game. It's called Primo Gem Farm. Because I'm really running out of things to do in this game. That's why I think I'm going to take a break from Genshin Impact. Like, either after this banner. If I don't pull Alhaitham, I think I'm done. I think I'm going to, like, quit quit Genshin for like a good couple of months. Cause like last year I came back to this game. Like I quit Genshin from, I want to say it was like this, sometime in 2021. It was sometime after Inazuma. Like I quit the game and I never went back to it until like May of last year. So I was like gone from the game for like half a year, essentially. And then I made the mistake of coming back, and then I've kind of been stuck playing this game ever since, really. Like, I've been playing this game like it's an MMO. Wait. Oh, I can't open that? I need to find the secret. I have to find the thing. Oh, this. I don't. Hopefully this will last. Oh, I got an idea. Use this. There, that worked. Ooh. Is this a secret area? Or does this lead just in a big circle? The Rain's End. I think this just goes back in a big circle. I do like this game's, I like the way this game's world, the world exploration of this game is really nice. A lot of people like to criticize Genshin. I know the whole thing with like Genshin versus Sonic Frontier Player's Choice Award at the Game Awards like last year. You know, people wanted Elden Ring to win that. I don't really know about that because Elden Ring, I knew Elden Ring can't really win in terms of population, like the amount of people that play it. But yeah, it definitely deserved to win Game of the Year. Okay, I think this is not the right way to go. We're not going to go over there. Because all I need to do, I just need to do that one dungeon. I don't understand what I'm doing. Like, I'm making this way harder than it needs to be. Oh, there's these. But the thing is, like this game, even if you play this game casually, this is still a really fun game. Like, this game is constantly getting updates, so there's always something to do. So it feels kind of like an MMO. You can also play with 3 other players. So you can group up with your friends, you can do stuff. But you can also play it like Breath of the Wild. Like, Breath of the Wild is probably the most direct comparison I can make between this game and like another game. Or like a single player open world game, because this has that vibe. It does feel like that type of game. Oh, it's another one of these puzzles. Does the electrocuting this thing work? Does it charge it up? Okay. Because I remember there was an MMO that came out last year that I did play at launch. It was called Tower of Fantasy. Tower of Fantasy, I tried that game. I tried so hard to like that game. But in the end, that game was like a hollow shell of nothing. No offense to anybody that still plays it, but it's like Tower of Fantasy, I tried to like that game. I played it for a month from release, and then eventually just gave up on it. Because it just, the cracks started showing through. Like, all the issues with it, or the lack of quality, just started becoming very, very apparent. And then the other thing, too, was Sumeru in Genshin Impact launched. So this game had its big expansion, like, end of August last year. And that kind of, you know, was the final nail in the coffin for Tower of Fantasy. At least for me, it was. And I just never went back ever since. Just stuck playing this. I mean, the only other, like, live service game that I play... Well, this is really the only one. Final Fantasy 14. But it's like, that's a real MMO, not like this. Oh, see, there's like random barriers. This game does have a lot of cool systems, though. Like, the thing about this game is the combat is really good. The exploration is really good. The music is very good. Those things, believe it or not, they actually matter. Tower of Fantasy didn't really have any of that. Because I think, like, while I wasn't playing Genshin last year, the game that I was playing mostly was Elden Ring, and then Stranger Paradise, and that was basically it. Like, it was those two games. Then I went back to Genshin Impact, and then I didn't really play like any other games last year, except like the end of last year, like when we did all the hardware stuff. You know, AMD Ryzen, Intel 13th Gen, the graphics cards, ARC, etc. Then I actually revisited other games, because then, out of necessity, all of a sudden I had a reason to play all these other games. It's very useful to have an archer. I just realized, like, if I didn't have an archer with me, like if Faruzan wasn't here, I don't know how we would do these puzzles. It'd be near impossible. Okay, that's the last one. There's probably a treasure chest somewhere. Oh, I bet it loops back in the circle.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, it went in a big circle. I like the Spider-Man web swing ability in this game that they added with Sumeru. That's really cool. Although they had a similar one in Azuma, but it was a little bit more clunky. The Sumeru one is a lot better. The web swing. The Inazuma one was like the Batman. This Sumeru one is like Spider-Man in terms of how you can zip around in the air. Wow, all that bloom. Okay, I need to get the heals in. Oh. I saw the latest video on Lies of P. Lies of P, that game looks like it is very promising. I'm not trying to set my expectations for it too high though. That's annoying. I'll get her with Faruzan. There, wow. Okay. Fantastic. Fantastic beasts. Wait, I can still go back here? I thought they would close it off. Okay. Did I miss something? Why am I able to run back here? Normally they disable your ability to go back. Unless I miss something. What aspect of games do you hope to be most improved with new engines? So for Unreal Engine 5, that one in particular, I'm hoping that they fix the shader compilation issues that have plagued Unreal Engine 4, basically since that entire engine's existence. X3D Ryzen next month? Maybe. I'm not sure if I actually need one though. That's the thing. Like I could have waited to upgrade, but I don't think that would have ran counterintuitive to this channel, because this channel does kind of cover like enthusiast grade hardware. So I could, like, if I didn't upgrade to AM5 last year at launch, I would have, like, right now I would either be using the 13900K or, well, I gotta think about that, because realistically, if I didn't upgrade to AM5, then I probably would have skipped the 13900K, and I would, that means I would still be on Zen 3. I'd still be streaming with a 5800X, which isn't really that bad, to be honest. That CPU is no slouch. A lot of people, like, Zen 3 is still a bestseller globally, so, but you're saving for the X3D? Yeah, see, that's probably going to be one of the best CPUs of the year. That one in particular, although, you know what? I kind of think that the... Well, we'll see. I'm not going to get my hopes up too high. But yeah, I think for the money, depending on where that CPU ends up, if that CPU is like 450, because you got to remember, like, the 5800X3D at launch was 449, was its original launch MSRP. So I would expect the 7800X3D to be similarly priced, if not something like 479. It kind of depends on how it performs relative to the non-X3D. Because there's kind of a compromise, right? Like, the X3D won't run as hot, which means it will have a lower target temperature, which means it will also have a lower maximum boost clock, hence why they advertise it with 5 gigahertz as the maximum boost clock. And you can't really overclock it either, because of the 3D cache stacked on top of it. It's just going to be too much heat. So it's funny because the non-X processors launched this month, and you can just literally turn on PBO, and most of the time they perform pretty much the same as the X parts from what I've seen. But the X3D parts, so at the Ryzen 7 7800X3D, I don't think you'll be able to overclock that one in the same way you can't overclock the 5800X3D. But I think that those CPUs are already so fast that you probably don't even need to overclock them. The nice thing about the X3D is going to be less power. It's 120 watts. It's 120 watts, and I believe the target temperature is 80 or 85 degrees instead of 95 degrees. So it has a lower target temperature, which means it won't be as hot. It won't use as much power. That means the cooling on it won't have to be insane. Although, you know, I've already kind of debunked that whole theory, that whole idea that you need insane amounts of cooling to handle Zen 4, because I'm running mine on an air cooler and I don't have any problems with it. So, yeah. It's all about the wattage. See, the thing is, the 95 Celsius is a target temperature, so I think the X3D parts having lower... What CPU do I got? I mean, I have to say it again. I have to... It's almost like I have to list this say this every single stream, even though it's literally in the video description. So this is the CPU that we are streaming with. The Ryzen 9 7950X. So there's the box, that's it. So this is what I use. And we are gaming on a AMD Radeon... Oops, I hit the mic. Sorry about that. XTX, so the 7900 XTX, Red Devil, so that's the one. Now I know this one is the reference, the made by AMD, because this is the Sapphire box. This is in a different computer right now, but we are gaming on the Red Devil. No, XTX. Yeah, I mean, all those videos are on the channel. Like, the XT was on the channel, the XTX was on the channel, the reference card, the Red Devil. The Red Devil box is up there behind me, up on the top of the bookcase right there, next to the XT box and the Intel Arc box. So, and the thing is, we are streaming using the AMD encoder. So it's not like streams don't look good with the AMD encoder. So, I mean, you can see for yourself. This is the AMF, so this is AMD's media framework encoder using the typical H.265, using YouTube's HLS protocol, and we're streaming at full 1080p, 60 FPS. That is the source. Now the actual game resolution is 4K, but you know, I'm kind of bandwidth limited, so I'm not going to stream in 4K 60, and that's kind of an insane amount of bandwidth to upload that to YouTube, and I don't know if I can even do that. You know, I might try that one of these days. I might try to stream at 4K and see if it'll actually work. If YouTube will accept it, because sometimes YouTube won't. I don't know, like, it kind of depends. It might be possible. Most people stream 1080p 60 or 720p 60. 7900X 3D confirmed to be an 8+4 configuration. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So the 7900X 3D is it's a 12 core. No, I think it's going to be a 6+6. I'm not sure. Has anybody said that it's an 8+4? I think it's a 6+6. I think it's a symmetrical. It's six cores on one CCD without any V cache, and then it should be 6 cores on another CCD with the V cache on top of that one. I think that's what it's going to be. It doesn't make sense for it to be 8+4. I don't know where you got that idea. That's very, very interesting idea. See, there's still some stuff in this game that I haven't explored. It's like I haven't found this thing. I can go do this one next. Oh, I think I actually kind of need this stuff. Extinguish the flames. Oh man, that's a lot of flames. Hey Joey. We're kind of talking about the X3D CPUs, although, so Kevin had asked earlier about engines improving. So I mentioned Unreal Engine 5. That's a big one, because I used to like Unreal Engine 4, but then when I became aware of shader compilation issues with that engine as kind of a limitation, Elden Ring is a game that kind of showed that, but it's not Unreal Engine based. But it's a problem that affects PC games using Unreal. You don't see it in the consoles. I don't know why. Digital Foundry did a video about it, and they don't even know why the consoles don't have the problem, but the PC does have the problem, and there's like really no way that they know of that can fix it, except Epic Games has tried to fix it, but they never were able to. So I guess in terms of like new engines, Unreal Engine 5, I hope that resolves that issue. I would expect it. And then, you know, I don't know. It's nice to see a lot of games that use their own engine, like Plague Tale Requiem. They're kind of a smaller studio that made that game, and they use their own in-house stuff. Genshin Impact, so the game that I'm playing right here, this game uses Unity of all things. This game is made in Unity. So this game, I think, is proof that you can make a very high-quality game using Unity. Because a lot of people seem to not think a whole lot of Unity. Like, they kind of underappreciate it, or it's an underrated engine, let's put it that way, compared to games like, or engines like Frostbite, Unreal, Crytek's engine, etc. So what do I need here? Again, Dendro. This place really wants you to bring a lot of Dendro. So Nahida has to stay. I don't know if we need her. We use her to swirl the damage from these other two, but Faruzan and Nahida do not actually mix. Like their elements don't actually combine at all. Whereas these two work with both of those. So that's why it's actually kind of good. But if I wanted to do like, we could try like electric. We could go with more electric. Let's try electric actually. Although, hold on, I gotta think about this because I think I actually need an archer. I think we're gonna need an archer. So the only problem is if I get rid of him, I don't have bloom. You know what? Let's go with explosion. Let's go with explosions. This one. See if this actually works. We're gonna use a pyro archer. No water. So now we're just gonna fry everything with pyro. They don't, the mushrooms don't like it. All that overload though, that's some really good damage. Yeah, I can see all the burn damage. They take a lot of burn damage. Wow. They actually weren't able to fight back that well. I need to try pyro more often around here. I remember they were touting, like, this zone. You don't want to use pyro in this zone because it's not good. Those enemies didn't actually try to fight back. It's like they were scorched too much or something. Is this gonna cook that mushroom? No, sometimes the pyro messes with the mushrooms, though. That's the only problem. Start challenge? What? Oh. Wrong way. Okay, got it. Is this another one? Another challenge? Why can't I go there? I like the amount of platforming, though, that this game has. This game is like a much easier version of Elden Ring. It's like the world exploration is not as complicated. The combat is not nearly as hard. It's so much easier to like play this game and chat with viewers. Compared to like if I was trying to play like Neo 2 or Elden Ring or Dark Souls, like those type of games demand your attention. They're like way harder to talk and play those games at the same time. Probably another game that would suffer from that kind of problem is Resident Evil. Because I still haven't finished Resident Evil. Resident Evil Village, specifically. Is there a treasure chest down here? No. Is there somewhere to go? Like, why is all this stuff closed? Oh, I messed that up. Alright. Well, that goes pretty far down. All of those rooms are closed, though. There's barriers everywhere. I guess we're going this way, then. Wait, but this goes to the boss room. There's really no way to... Hold on, you know what? I want to go all the way down. Is there anything all the way down here? Really? There's nothing to explore. So this is just an empty map, essentially, with, like, rooms that you can't go in. See, that doesn't seem... I feel like there's something missing. What was this? What if I do this? Nothing? Nothing. Okay, well, never mind then. Let's just go get out of here then. There's nothing in here. Wait, I can't even go in there. Why are all the rooms sealed off? But the one game, so like Hogwarts Legacy, that game, I'm curious to know what that game was made with, because that game, that's probably the most interesting game that's coming out, and we only have to wait like 3 weeks for it. I don't think it's Unreal. It could be. I mean, it looks like it's using its own thing though. Yeah, I guess we're just going here. This room looks different. This looks like the boss fight room. The music starts playing. Ouch, that thing just ram into me and then take massive damage. I'm gonna die. Okay, she died. Is anybody else planning to play that Hogwarts Legacy game? Or am I like the only one? Because I don't want to bore everybody by talking about it more and more. Okay, this dude, this little dude thinks he can just like spiral around. Alright, we need to say goodbye here. Get out of here. There we go. Huh. Okay. I think that's the last one that I had to gather Primo Gems from on the map. I don't think I have any. Like, there's this one and there's this one, but I don't have them unlocked. I did that one. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait, there's one more. Okay, we gotta do this one. You're gonna wait till it's free? The Hogwarts Legacy game? So that's one that I'll definitely be covering. And the thing is, they released the final PC specs for that game. And at the upper end, like, that game is very, very demanding. Oh, this one wants Electro and Dendro. That's perfect. But I think we can... Yeah, we'll have to keep her, because we're still going to need an archer. It's our favorite salesperson. So, let's see. Is this just going to be like a boss fight thing or something? Whoa, those guys put me in a bubble. What? What killed her? She literally like... Whoa, these things do a lot of damage. Alright, I'm gonna have to burn them with fire. Okay, that worked. That actually worked really well. I hope we don't have to fight the super shroom though. The super shroom is gonna be a problem. Because you don't bring pyro to a fight against the super shroom. We fit what? Wait, One Piece Odyssey. Fire Emblem Engage. Oh, when does that come out? I really... The reason why I haven't been paying attention to the Switch games is because I really want a newer Nintendo platform. Or give me the Switch 2 with DLSS. Because the Switch, everybody knows that DLSS makes no sense on like high-end hardware. DLSS makes sense on low-end hardware. That is actually where it matters. Apparently there's something that I didn't get over here. Alright, let me... Yeah, I think I noted that game down, but because it's on the Switch, like... I don't know. Yeah, that game is gonna be good. But see, like, I still haven't finished Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and it's because every time I start playing that game on the Switch, I just think about how it could look so much better if it was on a better platform. Like, I think with Sony releasing their games on the PC, that is actually really, really good. Like, why can't Nintendo do this? Is Nintendo just gonna be that one company that refuses to do that, and then they just eventually go bankrupt over time, or they just suffer like quarterly losses? Although I know they're not gonna suffer quarterly losses because they make too much money on the mobile side. The thing is with Nintendo, not only do they make money from, it's weird because Nintendo makes a lot of money from the Switch, but they also make a lot of money from mobile, like cell phone games, especially in Asia. This is something that's lesser known in the West. Come on, Lisa. Get him. There we go. Keep killing these guys. Burn them up. Burn these mushrooms down. Kill that one. I need more. I need more. Okay, go, go, go. Okay. Come on, Mahita. Hit him with this stuff. Hit him with that stuff. Burn him down, burn him down. Why is this dude like... There we go. Keep the string going. We gotta keep killing them. Keep frying those mushrooms. Keep frying those mushrooms. Fireworks on mushrooms. Mark them. Come on. Come on. Why am I losing the thing? What's going on here? Why aren't they dying? Oh, that was close. That was one. That was like a pog moment right there. We were at 1 second. Where's the big boss? Oh, we challenge completed. But why is the... What? Oh, we just have to beat... We just have to, like, beat a bunch of enemies. Alright, you got aggravate? I'm gonna get him with this thing. This one's stuck in the corner. Why is she hitting... See, the only problem with this game, there's no proper, like, lock target. Are those things healing? No, they're taking damage over time. Alright, that one died. One more. Come on. Mark this stupid thing. Blast him with, like, everything. Here we go. There we go. So addicting watching videos of older gen consoles. What are you talking about? Like commentary, or I guess documentaries, semi-documentaries from channels like Mystic. You know, like 6th generation, 7th generation, 8th generation, the PS3 era, the PS4 era. Because I watched those videos sometime last year, and I did like those videos. I think those are the type of videos you're talking about. Watching videos of older gen consoles, the rise and falls. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. They are cool. Like, I remember I watched the video, I watched some documentary about like the PSP, why it failed. It failed because of piracy. Piracy is the reason why the PSP failed. Because if you look back, the PSP had so many good games, like an insane amount of like Crisis Core. The fact that if you look at Crisis Core, now I know I played some Crisis Core last year on stream of the remaster Crisis Core Reunion on PC, and it looks amazing. But the thing is, like, what a lot of people don't know, or anyone who never played the original, what they don't know is that the remake is literally a complete remake of the PSP game, like frame by frame. The cutscenes, the animations, the actors' voice lines, everything is literally cut and paste right from the PSP. And the fact that when I realized that, I was like, man, the PSP, the animation quality in that on that small, tiny little cell phone sized console, I mean, could get like crank out a game like that. Because literally the only thing they did for the remake, I don't know why they redid the voice acting, because it's like the original voice cast was so much better. But for the most part, especially Zack. But like that's another game. Another really good game from the PSP was The Third Birthday. The Third Birthday was good. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Like there was so many good games on that console. It was actually worse than PS2, but I mean, because it's mobile. It was meant to. So the PSP launched while the PS2 was still the main console. But what ended up happening was the PSP ended up like existing in parallel to the PlayStation 3. So it's like, remember, because they implemented remote play, you could play PS3 games off of the PSP. And then like Vita fixed a lot of the piracy, but the thing is, so Vita had a different problem. So the problem with Vita, so the reason why the PSP struggled was because of piracy. The reason why the Vita struggled was because of cell phones, mobility, mobile games on cell phones. So it's almost like every single time Sony tried to go into the handheld market, they kept running into roadblocks. The first massive roadblock was piracy, and then with their second generation, with the Vita, their second roadblock was the fact that everybody had smartphones, and people started playing on their smartphones, on trains and subway stations and that kind of thing, on the bus. So then you ended up with a scenario where like game developers started putting more and more games on the cell phones, and it's like now no one cares about the Vita anymore. That was the problem that the Vita ran into. I personally like the PSP more. Like the PSP, so I don't know. So I'll just tell you guys, like the XMB, the cross media bar, the PlayStation 3's menuing system and UI was so good. It was so ahead of its time. I actually like that menu system so much better than what you have on the Vita. The Vita is like a cell phone, but it's like round bubbles and stuff. It's like, what? It's like they're trying to copy Apple, but it doesn't even look as good as the way Apple's iOS looked. They should have just stuck with XMB. The cross media bar on the PSP and the PS3 was so good. In fact, to this day, I still think that the XMB on the PS3, that looks cleaner and better than what we have on the PS4 And the PS5 was like an evolution of the PS4's interface. Like, the PS5 one is okay. I don't have a problem with it. It's more like a toned down of what we had on the PS4. Where the PS4 was like in your face, big squares. These are the games. It's like, okay, yeah, that looks... I mean, I guess it looks good on a giant 60-something inch television or something. But, like, if I'm just going to stream a game off of the console with a capture card, and it's just going to be on my center monitor, like, I don't really need these giant icons everywhere. So, I don't know. Like, XMB was so much better. PS3 was such an underrated console because, like, I just think that generation was so underrated in general. Because, like I said it on a previous stream, and I think we talked about this, the jump from PS2 to PS3, I think was the biggest jump in terms of graphical fidelity that we ever got. Because, like, some people will argue, okay, no, PS1 to PS2 was the biggest leap, and then they'll cite, like, Final Fantasy VII versus Final Fantasy X. I guess if you go back and look at the problem is like if you look at Final Fantasy IX was at the end of the PS1's life. Final Fantasy X is kind of like at the start of the PS2's life. So it's like, yeah, it does look a lot better. But then it's like, okay, look at Final Fantasy 13 on the PS3 and compare that to Final Fantasy X on the PS2. And then tell me, like, which one's a bigger leap. Exactly. Because it's like, yeah, Final Fantasy X looked amazing when you compare it to, like, Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 on PS1. But Final Fantasy 13 and Final Fantasy 15, they still look... well, okay, no, not Final Fantasy 15, because that's PS4. But, like, Final Fantasy 13 looks so much better than Final Fantasy X. In fact, if you guys look at so take a screenshot of, or look at, like, Final Fantasy 13 on the PS3, and then look at a screenshot of Final Fantasy X off of Steam. Like, go look at the PC remaster of Final Fantasy X, and compare that with, like, Final Fantasy 13 on the PS3. That's my point. Like, my point is, PS3 saw the biggest leap. Like, I can point out some other games. Metal Gear Solid 4. I think we talked about this on the previous stream. Metal Gear Solid 4, like, hands down, like, blew the door. Like, it just, like, blew everything else out of the water when that game came out in terms of how it looked. Like, the cutscenes in that game, everything. Like, they used the in-game engine. I'll never forget how Metal Gear Solid 4, MGS4, on a PS3, like, you had to watch Old Snake smoke cigarettes for like 2 minutes or maybe like 6 minutes or something while it loaded in the whole chapter. But then all those cutscenes were all seamless. There was no load times after that, and all the cutscenes were done in engine. Everything was done in engine. If you guys remember how it was on the PS2 had like FMV, like CGI cutscenes where like there were animated cutscenes. They weren't actually done in engine. Whereas on the PS3, you actually started seeing games that had cutscenes fully done, fully animated in engine. Like, in engine! Like, that's the reason why I still feel like the PS3 generation was the biggest leap. It was the biggest leap. Like, now granted, you couldn't really play games at like 1080p. Most of the games in that generation were 720p experiences, but that's technically high definition. You know, HD resolution is actually 720p. FHD is 1080p. So I consider the PS3 like the biggest leap, because PS4 was literally more like it was more like an evolution of the graphics. PS4 literally just went from 720p PS3 era to 1080p PS4 era, while mostly looking the same. The only difference was obviously it was a stronger system, so you had higher pixel counts, you had higher polygon counts on 3D models. So for instance, the characters started looking more clear. Like, that's why a game like this, like Genshin Impact, this game with the characters like this is playable on the PS4. Now, granted, it doesn't run very good on the PS4. It's like a 1080p 30 FPS experience on the PS4. But a game like this is playable on the PS4. So, but this game's graphics, like the polygon count on this game, it's weird because it's like this game scales all the way down to be played on a cell phone. Like you can play this game on a mobile phone. You can play it on a PlayStation 4, a PlayStation 5, a PC, and a mobile phone. So it's like 4 different platforms. And it looks very different across all the platforms. Like the PS5 and the PC look the same, but the PS4 looks worse than this, and then like the mobile one is like way worse than the PS4. Killzone 2 was I still remember the Killzone 2 trailer, and it took like I think it was like 3 years later the game finally comes out on the console. But so many interesting games. Like the other thing too that a lot of people don't seem to remember, or they don't really think about this, but the PS3 had a lot of more like interesting genres of games. Like for instance, I don't know if you guys ever remember like Nier, the original Nier was on PS3. There was a game called Catherine, which was like a weird platformer puzzle game, which was probably one of the most unique games released by Atlas. Like I honestly found the game Catherine more interesting than the Persona games. Like I know I'm definitely in the minority when I say that, because the Persona games are really, really good, but the Persona games, I feel like the only thing with the Persona games is those are typical JRPGs. You have to invest a lot of time and hours into playing those games to get the full experience. But like Atlas made this game called Catherine on the PS3, and it was like such a random, like it was one of those like sleeper hits. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and it was so good. Like to this day, Catherine is one of my top 5, probably definitely top 10, but maybe one of my top 5 PS3 games of that generation. And then there were other games too. Like if we're talking like RPGs, White Knight Chronicles and White Knight Chronicles 2 on PS3. Like I remember that game. I remember like grouping up with 3 other people to grind Best Served Cold. Best Served Cold, have to grind that mission over and over and over again for the gear. That was an interesting single player. It had a full single player story, which was kind of like Final Fantasy XII story in a way, but more simplified. But then it had like multiplayer. Then you could like do co-op missions with like a full party of 4. And this is like a PS3 game. Like what? Reference XTX for 948 or 4080 for 1300 or 4090 for. I mean, definitely the XTX. If the 4080 is that much more money than the XTX, then I would get the XTX, because XTX is actually faster than the 4080. Like in rasterization, you gotta remember. So the way I evaluate the cards, and I kind of said this in my review, if you're buying a graphics card and you plan on using it for like 3 to 5 years, because typically refresh cycles for most people are within the 3 to 5 year period. Because the way I see it, there's like a bell curve of people who upgrade graphics cards. The vast majority of people who fall under that bell curve are going to upgrade within 3 to 5 years. The outskirts of the bell curve are the people who keep their graphics card longer, so like more than 5 years, or they upgrade sooner, like every generation. They would be on the other end of the bell curve. So if you fall into that category of you keeping your graphics card for 3 to 5 years, you want to look at which one has better rasterization. And then the next thing you want to look at is the VRAM. And the thing is, the 4080 is not a bad card. It's at a bad price. But the problem with the 4080, when you compare it to the XTX, you're comparing a 16 gigabyte card to a 24 gigabyte card. Keep in mind that the XTX has the exact same amount of memory that the 4090 has, 24 gigabytes. So if you're going to keep your card for 3 to 5 years, 24 gigabytes, you don't have to think about it. It's a no-brainer. Like, you're not going to be VRAM limited. And then the thing is, the other thing too is the rasterization performance. So the XTX does outperform the 4080 in rasterization by a small amount. Not a large amount. We're talking like maybe 5 to 6% faster, but it's still faster. And over time, that 5-6% lead will just kind of scale up over time. That's just how it is, right? Like, it's got more teraflops. So the only thing the 4080 wins at is ray tracing. But again, remember, the XTX, the ray tracing on the XTX is as good as a 3090 Ti's ray tracing. And it's not like a 3090 Ti's ray tracing is all of a sudden terrible. So it's not like it's bad at that either. So that's the reason why, you know, XTX definitely, especially because if it's that much cheaper, I mean, that's a no-brainer, man. Like, that's definitely a no-brainer. The only way the 4080 would be more comparable to the XTX if it was like, you know, 1,000 Canadian, maybe then the argument then becomes more challenging to figure out which one's better. But, you know, I just think long-term, 24 gigabytes is just going to age way better than 16, especially if you're going to be gaming at 4K, because 4K is really where you're going to see the VRAM scale a lot. Like, the amount of memory to push games at 4K, I mean, I already know, because, you know, when I was testing these cards, I remember Far Cry 6 was already eating like 12 gigabytes of memory, like maxed out with ray tracing turned on. So 12 gigs already in a game that isn't even brand new anymore. Who knows what's going to happen 2 years from now? So, there you go. Even on the XT, the 20 gigabyte. Yeah, exactly. So, see, the XT, so the XT and the 4080, in my mind, those two cards suffer from the same sort of scenario where they both are good products at a bad price. I really think the XT needs to be $100 less than what it is. I really think that the XT would have probably gotten a lot better reviews if it was $800 instead of $900. Basically, if the XT had the exact same price as the 4070 Ti, it would have done a lot better in the reviews. And I guess the public then would have a much more positive image of that card overall. But it's like the 4080. It's a good card, but it's priced too high for what it is. I really think the XT, though, 20 gigabytes, though, it's not going to age terribly at all. It's going to age really well with that much RAM. And it's also really good. Like, you know, again, we're talking like that card, I think when I did the review, the ray tracing on the XT was kind of like a 3080 Ti or a 3090. So again, that's not bad either, right? Like, it's not like 30 series ray tracing performance is bad. That's good. So, like, you gotta keep it real, right? Like, it's not like 30 series is bad at ray tracing. And like I said, you know, as time goes by, games will get more demanding on rasterization. Ray tracing is kind of a mixed bag, because the way I see ray tracing is kind of at a weird point right now where it's still new, but I think that developers are playing around with trying to figure out what is the most optimal way to implement RT in their games. And I think you're going to see some of them will lean more heavily on the path tracing approach, and then that's going to be a lot more demanding on most systems. But, you know, if you want your game to sell good, you don't want it to run like trash on the average PC that supports ray tracing. So it's like, I think a lot of them are going to pivot, and a lot of them are going to go to like DXR. They're going to use DXR libraries, Microsoft's ray tracing approach. And when they do that, you're going to get RT that performs kind of like Far Cry 6 RT and Shadow of the Tomb Raider and what was the other game that I tested? Because I tested like 5 different RT titles, and the ones that were using DXR, Resident Evil Village. The RT on, although Resident Evil wasn't super demanding, but just in general, like using DXR for ray trace shadows and global illumination did not cause a massive performance drop compared to using traditional path tracing. So it's one of those things where it's like, if they go the path tracing approach, then RT is going to run poorly on all the cards over the next couple of years. Like, it's just going to get harder and harder to run until the point where only the 4090 becomes like the only one that can actually do ray tracing and actually still do 60 FPS at 4K. or 1440p even. So, you know, then it becomes a point where it's like, well, no one's really going to run RT at ultra. They're just going to turn it down to like medium or something. So they're also UE5 software based RT. They can potentially run great on AMD. Yeah, and I think UE5 is using the DXR library, or they're using some kind of a variant of it, and I think that's the reason why. I mean, it makes sense because you don't want RT to be so cost prohibitive to run to the point where it's like people have to buy $1,600 graphics cards just to turn on ray tracing. That's just gonna kill ray tracing if that happens, right? So you have to make it more accessible to a larger audience, and the way you do that is you make it not be so demanding, while not sacrificing on the visual quality. Resident Evil's implementation is too weak, though. It doesn't look that impressive. Well, it doesn't look that different from the game with RT off. And that's because they don't really do a lot with global illumination. But the thing is, I think part of the reason why the RT on Resident Evil doesn't look that good is not that it doesn't look good, it's that it doesn't look that different. I feel like Capcom has something, like, they've discovered some gold mine with their RE engine. Like, ever since they started cranking out games on the RE engine is so well optimized, it just runs really, really good. Like, it scales well on consoles. The visual quality looks really good. Like, all the latest Resident Evil games look really good. Devil May Cry 5. Devil May Cry 5 uses the same RE engine. Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Resident Evil 3 Remake, Resident Evil Village, the upcoming Resident Evil 4 Remake. All those games are all using the exact same RE engine. And it just runs very, very well on DX12. You know, and it looks really good, too. So that's the reason why the RT doesn't look that quote-unquote good, because I think that the engine already renders the art direction in such a way that it just looks as good as it could get with that engine. So it's more like it's an engine limitation more than it is like a lack of RT. That's the way I see it. Because I tried to look for the differences. When I was benchmarking the games, I would turn the RT on, I'd turn it off. You know, I try to look at the corners in the building. I try to look at the sky, like the windows, to see like what's changing here. You know, like where is the light coming from? Is it bouncing off of those pillars in a different manner with RT on versus RT off? Like, I would look at that stuff and it's like, yeah, with Resident Evil, it doesn't look like it's doing much, but I could notice subtle differences. They're just very subtle, so you don't really see a big change. If the XT came out at 749 and called it... Yeah, Puffin, yeah, I agree with you. If they had called it the 7800 XT, and they priced it at 749, yeah, that would have been... That would have sold out faster than the XTX. Honestly, that would have sold out faster than the XTX. Because it's funny, you would have had the complete opposite effect. Like, I remember on launch day at Micro Center, they had like 60... They had like 30 XTX, and they had 60 XT. And so if the XT was 749... I'm pretty sure, like, within the first 2 hours, they would have sold out of the entire thing. Like, guaranteed, they would have sold out the entire thing in 2 hours. But because it was at 900, like, I roll up to the store, like, 4 hours after, you know, it opened, and I thought I could just walk in and buy an XTX. Because, you know, you guys know the story. Like, I walked in on the 4090 launch day. I rolled up to Micro Center at, like, 10:30 in the morning on launch day, and the 4090, it was the day that the 4090 and the Intel Arc A770 and A750 launched. I show up to Micro Center thinking, here I go, I'm just gonna get whatever they have. It's like, I asked the guy, like, do you have any 4090s? He's like, no, you should have came earlier, they're all gone. So then I was like, actually no, I take that back. He said they had like one. They had like a Zotac. They had the one that was like more than MSRP. It was like 1749 or something. He's like, we got a Zotac for 1749, the Trinity, whatever, the one that looks like a gym shoe or something. And then I was like, I gotta think about that. And I was like, do you have any Intel Arc A770s? And then he's like, we do. We actually have one left. He said, we got one. He said they got a box on the truck in the morning before the store opened. It was an unlabeled box. So they didn't even know what was in it. They go to open the box, and there was 2 A770s in there, and there was like 5 A750s in there. So when I showed up, they only had one A7. Someone else bought an A770, so there's only one left because there was only 2. And then he said they had like 3 of the A750s out of the 5 that they had. So I was like, okay, I'll take the A770. And I was like, I'm gonna pass on the 4090 because it's like, yeah, I don't want to pay. First of all, I didn't really want to pay $1,600, but I was also like, I don't. It starts at $1,600. It's like I really don't want to pay more than that. And I'm like, I'm just gonna pass on that Zotac. So that's the reason why I never got the 4090. That was my chance to get it, and I was like, now you can't find it anywhere. So we ended up going AMD. That's how that played out. Although, granted, I always planned to get some variant of the 7000 series GPUs. Like, I knew I was going to get one regardless. I don't think I need to talk to this guy. I think we're done. I think I have nothing else to do in this game. Hey, Resident Evil implementation. Okay, we talked about that. So, I mean, what else is there? I mean, we talked about the PS3 era, which was actually really cool. That's a win no matter how you slice it. What? You mean the, Oh, the fact that they still ended up selling out? Yeah, but I do agree with you though. Like, if they called the 7900 XT the 7800 XT and they priced it at $749, it would have sold out just as quickly as the 4090. Like, it would have sold out immediately because there were so many people that were waiting. Because I remember the day that I went and I got the Red Devil. So when I went in there, Micro Center had like 20 Red Devils, and they were all limited edition. And they had one out there, like on the sales floor, like up on the pedestal thing, on the display thing, and there was 2 sales guys standing next to it. So I go up there and I'm like, "Do you guys have any? Do you have any XTX cards?" And I kind of assumed that the Red Devil was the XTX card. And he's like, "Yeah, we got it right here. This is the Red Devil." And then I said, "Do you have any reference cards? Like just the standard reference card?" And then he was like, "Unfortunately, we don't have any. I mean, all we've got today is the Red Devil." And he said, "But we've got 4080s." So they had a couple of 4080s. I didn't care. I wasn't interested in that card. So I was like, okay. And then it's like the Red Devil, and it's limited edition. So it's $100 more than reference. So it's like $1,100. So I was like, I was thinking to myself, because you guys know, I've said on the previous stream, the AIB card that I wanted for the XTX was the Sapphire Nitro. The Sapphire Nitro is the one that I really wanted. But I knew they didn't have it. And then if it wasn't going to be that one, I wanted the reference card. They didn't have the reference card either. So that left me with the Red Devil. And I thought to myself, okay, here we are. This is like mid-December. It's almost the end of the year. I have to make a decision. This is the point where you have to make an executive decision. Because you don't know what's going to happen next year. I remember what happened in 2020 where you either managed to buy a graphics card on the day it was released, or if you failed to get one on the day that it released, you had to spend the last 2 years almost 2 years fighting scalpers and bots constantly during an era where, like, especially 2021, I'm looking at 2021 when I say this, where you had to fight tooth and nail to secure a graphics card at the lowest price possible. And when I say the lowest price possible, I'm not talking about MSRP. Like, there was no way to get a graphics card in 2021 at MSRP unless you went to a drop from Best Buy or you signed up for some, like, Best Buy started selling these subscription for a year, their Total Tech Care, whatever they called it, for the Geek Squad thing. If you signed up for that, but you had to pay like $200 for an annual subscription. It was like $199 for an annual subscription. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do it. That's ridiculous. But people were doing this so they could actually get like the Founders Edition NVIDIA cards from Best Buy, because it's like, you guys know the story, right? Well, I don't know if people outside the US know this story, but originally NVIDIA used to sell their graphics cards on their website. So if you wanted a Founders Edition NVIDIA card, you had two ways to get one. I don't know what it's like outside the US or outside of Canada, but the only way to buy an NVIDIA Founders Edition card, there was two ways. One was directly from NVIDIA.com or GeForce. Well, you used to be GeForce.com. I don't know why they got rid of that URL. But the other way to get one was Best Buy. Literally, it was NVIDIA.com or it was Best Buy. If you didn't use either of those two, there was no way to buy a Founders Edition card. Ever. Like, if you bought one off of Amazon, you bought one off of a scalper that was reselling it. If you bought one off of eBay, well, that's pretty obvious. If you bought one off of Micro Center, because I've heard some people manage to get them from Micro Center. Now, Micro Center normally doesn't sell Founders Edition cards. A lot of people don't know this, but the way Micro Center manages to get a hold of Founders Edition cards is they have to go through Disty. They have to go through the supply chain and secure them via third party, because NVIDIA will not give Founders Edition cards. They won't sell Founders Edition cards on the back end to Micro Center. They have some kind of exclusive deal with Best Buy in North America, so that Best Buy is the only reseller, the only authorized reseller of NVIDIA's Founders Edition cards. Like, this is a thing. It's been like this ever since Pascal, aka GTX 1080. So, when the well, okay, this was pre-pandemic. Well, no. This was during the pandemic. When the 30 series launched, GeForce.com got taken down because there was too many. They got basically they thought it was a DDoS when it was literally just bots and people just trying to spam NVIDIA's site to buy a 3080 card. It was like that meme of that guy trying to speed run buying a 3080 experience. So you know what NVIDIA said? No more. We're not gonna sell these on our own website anymore. Too much trouble. I don't want people DDoSing me. Jensen Huang's like Tony Stark in the Avengers. He's just like, nope, not doing it. See ya. Nope. Best Buy, you guys handle this. You guys deal with the bots and scalpers. NVIDIA.com is not going to be selling NVIDIA graphics cards anymore. So, to this day, NVIDIA does not sell their Founders Edition cards directly off of their website anymore because of all the scalpers and the bots and all the gamers that tried to buy one back in September of 2020. They ruined it for everybody else. Thank you, Mr. Scalpers and Miss Bots and gamers or whoever you are. You basically caused NVIDIA to no longer sell their own graphics cards. So it was the 3080 generation where that happened. And that's the reason why now the only way to buy a Founders Edition card in North America is through Best Buy. They are literally the only source. So it's like, good luck fighting tooth and nail with bots and scalpers every day for a 4090. So that's the reason why I don't care to get a 4090. It's like, I don't need one of those. The XTX is like almost just as good. The FPS, you guys have to remember too, and there was another really good video by PC World. So Gordon from PC World interviewed, this was when they were in Vegas for CES. He interviewed BPS Customs, and BPS Customs, like, he was saying, he made a really good point that I have always thought about, but I never actually openly said this. in any of my live streams or any of my videos. But he made a really good point that when the FPS is so high, you know, we're talking like 100 plus FPS, to the point where it's faster than the monitor's refresh rate. At that point, does it really matter if one graphics card is better than the other? As long as both of them are like capable of going well beyond what the monitor can maximum, like what the maximum of the refresh rate is capable of doing? Like, does it actually matter? So he was like, buy what you need. Don't buy like what you think you need just because it has like a chart topper result. And that's a really good point, because like when you look at it, even cards like the 6000 series, like the 6900 XT, the 6950 XT, even like the 3080, because, you know, I've had people who have come into my streams, and I'll never forget, like someone said they have a 3080 Ti, or it was either 3080 or 3080 Ti, and I'm like, should they upgrade to the XTX or the 4090? And that was the question. And like my follow-up to that question was, what is the monitor resolution that you're playing on? That was the question. And I think I don't remember exactly, but I think they said they're on 1080p, like 240 hertz monitor, 240 1080p. My answer after that was, don't even bother upgrading. You're just gonna end up with buyer's remorse if you spend all that money on, you know, any of these GPUs. There's no point. There's literally no point. Like, if you're on a 1080p monitor and you have a 3080, why are you thinking about upgrading? You have to upgrade your monitor first for it to make sense. Because I remember somebody left a comment on my review video saying that I should include 1080p results for these high-end GPUs because some people still... And I didn't reply to that comment because I thought that the person who is typing that comment, they want to know... I understand where they're coming from. They want to know, like, what are the FPS numbers when they're playing at 1080p. But the thing is, I don't want to encourage people to throw away so much money on a graphics card if they're just going to play it on 1080p. Like, that, to me, that seems kind of irresponsible, because it's like, unless they're on some really, really old, and I mean really old, like 1060 or older. Like, they have to be on either the 1060 or older. So like GTX 970 or 960, or, you know, like an old R9 280X. Like, unless they're on something that's so old, then I would recommend the 7900 XT. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend that. I would recommend that they go and get like a 6750 XT, or maybe a 6800 if they can find one. You know, that's what I would recommend. I would not recommend any of these GPUs that launched in the last few months, because 1080p, like, really? Okay, assume that this person has a 1080p 240 hertz monitor. Okay, 240 hertz. So that's the target FPS number. Pretty much all of these GPUs can easily hit that in pretty much all of the games, except for some of the most demanding games like Cyberpunk, like Plague Tale Requiem. But the thing is, like, do you really need 240 FPS to play Cyberpunk and Plague Tale Requiem? To me, something there seems kind of out of place in terms of priorities in life. Like, when people, I don't know. That's just me. 1080p has become the esports fanatics resolution. Yeah, but see, the thing is with esports, so when I hear esports, I think of two games. I think of League of Legends and I think of Counter-Strike. Now, some people might mention like Apex Legends or something. Okay, who cares about Apex Legends? It's like, okay, cool story, whatever. But it's like 1080p, low settings. Everyone's gonna play at 1080p, low settings. If you're serious about low latency, high FPS, you don't care about graphics fidelity at that point. So it's like, even a random like RTX 2070 is gonna be good enough for esports gaming at low settings in Apex Legends. Like, let's be real. Let's be real. Nobody needs, anyone with a 4-year-old GPU is probably fine at 1080p if all they do is play League of Legends and Counter-Strike. Like, it's not... At 1080p is not that hard. They're overthinking it. It's like all these like big GPUs, they don't actually do anything for them. They don't help. The Apex fan base, I don't really care about the Apex fan base. See, the thing is, like, the reality is, I know some people that play Apex like hardcore. If they're actually going to be playing in like a rank, like if they're trying to actually climb, they're not going to be playing on anything above medium. They're not going to play on anything above medium, because the other thing too is when you turn on all the bells and whistles, it actually becomes slightly harder to spot other players because there's too much other extra things from the graphics on screen. Like, this is the reason why, like, PUBG is another really good example. If you play PUBG on low versus PUBG on ultra, like, it's a little bit harder to spot other players if you're playing on ultra, because there's more tessellation, the ground has more texture, so it's harder to see, like, the differences between things on the ground, the foliage, a car that's parked over there on the side of the road. You know, like, it's harder. Like, I from personal experience, I can tell when I set the graphics to low, it is easier to spot players at a faraway distance compared to trying to spot the same player at the same distance having the game cranked up to ultra. So the reality is, anybody who's seriously playing for competitive reasons, they're not going to be playing on ultra settings. Like, they're not going to play on ultra settings, and when you play on low settings, you don't need an XTX or a 4090 to max out low settings and get like 200 plus FPS. That's just not how it is. You know, any 6000 series, like a RX 6700 XT, 6800, RTX 3070 Ti, all those cards are going to be good enough to do that. The cousin is a CS. Oh, your cousin is a CS competitive and won on a C. Yeah, see? And that's the thing. Like, the thing with first-person shooters is, I think skill matters more than what hardware you use. It's like, there's that saying that Trunks used in Dragon Ball Z when he fought King Cold. When King Cold asked to hold the sword, because the sword was what he used to kill Frieza, and King Cold thought, oh man, I need that sword because that's the source of his power. And then he said something like, haven't you ever heard that the weapon doesn't make the man? Just saying. So, common sense has long since left. These are the kinds of people who upgrade their system to go from a 2 to... okay. 320 FPS in CSGO, like, at low settings. You don't even need any of the GPUs that have launched in the last 3 months. Like, none of them. The 7900 XT, the 4070 Ti, none of those cards are needed for 320 FPS in CSGO. Like, I'm just saying, especially at 1080p resolution. And the thing is, like, if we want to get really, really technical with CSGO, a lot of them will even play at those 4x3 resolutions or those 5x4 resolutions, like 1280 by 1024, because, you know, like, less having to look around, like, you see everything just kind of there in front of you, so less physical movement. It's just more like eye movement at that point. And then even then, when it's 4x3, it's less eye movement than 16:9. That's why I honestly don't understand the appeal of ultra wide. Yeah. Bros use CRTs. I'm just saying, like, 4x3. Don't necessarily need a CRT, but just 4x3 or 5x4. Like, that aspect ratio. Like, 1280 by 1024 is, like, the most competitive. That's one of the most competitive resolutions. You know, it's weird because in the laptop world, the 16:10 aspect ratio is starting to come back. I really don't understand why it's coming back. I don't know who's responsible for deciding that. I know Apple historically has resisted the trend of having everything 16:9. aspect ratio. Maybe Dell and the other OEMs on the Windows side decided, oh, you know what? Let's finally decide to copy Apple again and go 16 by 10 because Apple's doing it. But 16 by 10, I actually like 16 by 10. I've always liked 16 by 10 aspect ratio. It's taller than 16 by 9. But over the years, I've gotten so used to 16 by 9 that now it feels kind of weird. It's like, I really hope that they don't try to standardize on 16 by 10 again. Nothing's wrong with 16 by 9, but a long time ago, so I'm talking like 10 plus years ago, in like 2000, when did I get my first laptop? My first laptop was like in 2010, I think, and it was a 16 by 10 panel. Yeah, it was a 16 by 10. That was my very first laptop. It was in 2010, and it was 16 by 10, and that was like the last year that you could buy 16 by 10 new for a Windows laptop. Like, Apple, I think, had always been 16 by 10, but everyone else just went 16 by 9. And it was because of full HD. So because of 1080p, 1080p was like really, really becoming a thing in the monitor segment. So display technology on the PC side was definitely going 16 by 9. And I think laptops eventually followed suit in like 2011, 2012, around that time. So it's like, it's funny because it's like we've gone a full decade, and now it's like, now 16 by 10 is the cool thing again, at least on the laptop side. I don't think it's gonna happen on the display side, like for monitors. I could be wrong, but I don't know. Like, what are they gonna do? Because 4K is like a video standard resolution. You know, YouTube, Twitch, all these like platforms, they're all gonna be 16 by 9. They're not really changing. Yes, that was actually my laptop's resolution. It was 1680 by 1050. My first computer, my first laptop, and there actually is a really, really ancient YouTube video on my channel showing that very laptop. My very first laptop was a Lenovo ThinkPad T500. It was a T500, and that was a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. The resolution was 1680 by 1050. And then, like, I think a year after that, they rolled out like 1080p on those laptops. It makes sense for laptops for productivity, but it's obviously not a massive difference. You'd be surprised. Like, I could do an entire lecture on why 16 by 10 is actually better than 16 by 9. There's actually a lot of mathematical reasons why it's better. The 16 by 10, to not go too much on that topic, 16 by 10 is regarded as something known as the golden ratio. So it is supposed to be more aesthetically pleasing to the human eye psychologically than 16 by 9. There's just something about that shape, that slightly taller rectangle that the 16 by 10 aspect ratio provides. There's a lot of math behind it as well. I don't want to do a deep dive on that right now. That might be a really good video topic, but 16 by 10, just to put it simply, 16 by 10 is better for a lot of weird reasons that aren't immediately visible to the average person. So there's a lot of reasons. And that might be the reason why Apple has never deviated from 16 by 10 for most of the existence of all their laptops. Lenovo actually had a 4K option for their 2014 laptop. Oh, I didn't know about that. What I do know is that I used to have a Lenovo monitor called the Lenovo ThinkVision L220X. It was a 1920 by 1200 WUXGA. That is a 16 by 10 panel. I bought it used off of eBay because it was a monitor from like 2007. You know, it's old school CCFL technology, so it wasn't using what do you call it? It was not an LED backlight. It was CCFL backlit. Cold cathode fluorescent lighting, I believe, is what that stands for. So it wasn't an LED. But it was a VA panel also, so vertical alignment. So it wasn't TN, it wasn't IPS. And for a monitor from 2000, it was a 22-inch. So it was a nice 22-inch 16 by 10 ThinkVision L220X is the model if you guys want to look it up. That monitor, I'll never forget that monitor. That monitor looked so good. The color accuracy, it had a wide color gamut. I think it was like 98 or 97% sRGB or Adobe sRGB. But it was really good. Like, it was a very nice monitor. And it was a 1200p monitor, so slightly higher resolution than 1080p, because it's basically 1080p except it's taller. So yeah, that was probably one of my favorite monitors, and it was the only monitor that I ever bought like as a used secondhand monitor. Typically every other display that I've ever had has always been like, I typically buy them new, either off of Newegg or Best Buy. Like the Sony InZone that I'm using now, like this was from Best Buy. And then like these two side monitors are actually from Micro Center from like 2017, these are my 1440p monitors. So these are, I think, like I went to 1080p in 1200p actually, that ThinkVision, in like 2010, 2011. Before that, I was on 1280 by 1024. Interestingly enough, we were talking about Counter-Strike earlier and why people play on 5x4 or 4x3. Let's turn this down, I guess. You just plugged in PC into the LG OLED and it's so glorious. Yeah, see, that's where I think display technologies are going. OLED is the future. OLED is where we're going with display technology. Because I think we've got the resolution problem under control. Like I think there's gonna be a lot of like 4K adoption over the next 2 to 3 years. Like right now, most people. So if you look at Steam, most people are still playing on 1080p. But I'm not talking about just gaming. I'm talking about the overall market. So you have a lot of people in their homes, they still have 1080p televisions. Someone just came out with a desktop size OLED that looks really good. Yeah, I bet that's really expensive though. See, I expect OLED to be the way forward, but just like how 4K was so expensive for a long time, and then every year the price of 4K went down until eventually, even now though 4K is still expensive. If you're looking at like an HDR 144 hertz monitor, 4K is still kind of pricey compared to like 1440. I kind of think that I really wanted 1440p to get more adoption in the market, but I kind of think that 1440p is never really going to directly replace 1080p. Now, if you go look at Steam's hardware surveys seem to state otherwise. Steam's survey alone seems to indicate that a lot of people, not a lot of people, but gamers on PC are slowly migrating to 1440p. There's this slow exodus from 1080p to 1440p. But I think that the reason why I don't see 1440p ever replacing 1080p as the gaming standard resolution is because of what, like, you guys are talking about in the chat about like OLED and 4K. I really think that what's going to happen is OLED is going to get cheaper and cheaper, but the thing is OLED is going to cause IPS and VA and TN to get even cheaper. And when those older technologies get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, that's going to drive down the price of, like a 144 hertz 4K monitor, like way down. And that's going to make 4K more easy to adopt. The thing is, so this is where I'm going with this argument. So yeah, like you guys are kind of paying attention here. So people don't have the hardware to run 4K today, and that's true. But you got to look at like what the consoles do. I've always looked at the consoles as an enabler, a market enabler. They basically act as a network effect, where you guys have to think about this. Like, for example, DVDs. Most people didn't really have DVD players in their home theater systems or in their media centers in their homes until like PlayStation and then later Xbox really pushed DVD adoption, because the PS2 literally came with a DVD player built in for free. Like, it's included with the console. So a lot of people were able to adopt DVDs because they simply just bought a PS2. So, and then the Xbox also had the ability to play DVDs, but you had to buy like some weird add-on with a remote control. But anyway, that's one thing. You look at PS3, Blu-ray. Blu-ray ultimately won in the media war against Xbox 360. With Xbox had HD DVD and PS3 had Blu-ray. Blu-ray won because every single PS3 included a Blu-ray player. Whereas Microsoft's Xbox, you had to buy like some add-on. I think it was like $150 for like an HD DVD player, like a DVD drive. It was like, no one's really going to do that. So you got way more adoption of Blu-ray. So Blu-ray kind of became the standard for like mainstream video, like physical media. See, I never had an Xbox 360. You know, what's funny is that HD DVD drive is probably worth a lot of money as a collector's item. If it's not worth a lot of money today, it'll probably be worth a lot of money in like 10 years. Because there weren't a whole lot of those. The other, what was the other thing though? Like, where was it going with this? So like with 4K, right? Like, every time some newer technology comes in, it kind of drives the price down of the older technology. Like, we're seeing this with DDR5 in the PC world. So DDR5 came in, it's really expensive at first. DDR4 starts becoming dirt cheap. And then eventually what's going to happen is DDR5, higher end, faster DDR5 speeds like 7200, 6600, whatever, 6800 megahertz, those come into the market. That is going to drive down the price of more affordable DDR5 memory. You know, like DDR5 5600, DDR5 5200, and then DDR5 6000. They're going to become more affordable. So that's gonna shift the adoption rate to DDR5. Now, obviously, laptops being DDR5 is also going to do that. But the same thing with the display. So going back to the whole thing about 4K, it's like, yeah, we cannot run 4K. Most average gaming PCs can't handle 4K today, but you got to look at the consoles. So what did the PS5 and the Xbox Series X do? They introduced 4K gaming. Because both consoles typically do 4K. Now, I know some of them will do, you know, checkerboard rendering or whatever, depending on the game, but that's something that we really saw with the PS4 era. So I do think that because the consoles do 4K, that's going to drive down the cost of being able to game at 4K. So, like, the 2080 Ti, that was 2018. The 2080 Ti, in my mind, was the first 4K 60 GPU. It was the first one. Meaning when it came out, you could game at 4K and you could average 60 FPS in most titles. Not in every title, but in most titles. And keep in mind, I said 4K 60. I didn't say 4K 144 Hz. I said 4K 60. So the 2080 Ti was the first. But it wasn't until RDNA 2 and the 30 series that we actually got real 4K graphics cards. Like, I consider 3080 Ti and above, and it'll select 6800, 6800 XT and above 4K graphics cards. I consider those cards good enough for 4K gaming. I'm not saying you can game at like 144 hertz all the time on those cards, but in general, they allow you, they enable somebody to game at 4K with an average gaming experience. Case in point, this game that I'm playing right now, this is Genshin Impact, I am gaming at full 4K. So I'll show you guys the settings. Right here, you can see right there, 3840 by 2160. Now, this game has a 60 FPS cap. It is a live service game, so I can't mod it. I can't do anything to unlock the FPS. But who cares? It is what it is. VSync, okay, we can turn that off. Doesn't make any difference because the frame rate is 60 hertz. And my monitor's refresh rate is 144 hertz. So this setting literally does absolutely nothing. Render, we're rendering full 4K. Everything is, I think, as high as it goes. High, 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 high. Oh, this one actually can go higher. Okay. I didn't even realize that was an option there. So then basically everything is on, right? Like everything's maxed out. On. What is this? I don't like motion blur, so that's off. Anisotropic filtering, everything's maxed out. SMAA. Now this game does feature AMD's FSR2. But I'm just going to leave it on SMAA because the GPU is strong enough to handle the anti-aliasing at 4K max settings without any issues. So this game is an example. I'm able to play the game at 4K 60, and now if I had a 3080 or a 6800, I could get the same exact gaming experience, I'm pretty sure, on this game, full 4K max settings, 60 FPS, without any hiccups or any weird dips or anything. So that's what I mean when I say, like, 2020 was the year that ushered in true 4K gaming. Now, obviously, it's not affordable for everybody. The average person isn't going to go and buy a 3080 or a 6800 XT. Right? It's not practical. It's too expensive. It's only going to be like hardcore enthusiasts that are actually going to do that. So people that are typically watching these channels, like mine. But having said that, over time, the technology gets cheaper. So by the time we're like the next generation, so for example, RTX 50 series and the RDNA 4, so I guess AMD's 8000 or whatever they end up calling it, by the time we get to that generation, 4K 60 will pretty much be obtainable for someone who is buying a 60 class card, so like an RTX 5060 or an AMD Radeon 8000, like an 8700 or an 8600 XT. I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to play Genshin Impact at 60 FPS maxed out at 4K on one of those graphics cards. And those graphics cards are probably going to be, you know, well, with the way GPU pricing has been in the last couple of years, I don't know, but typically like a 60, you know, what was a 3060, right? Like 329. So like anywhere from $350 to $450. Bottom line is that with the next generation of consoles, you'll be able to, or okay, the next generation of GPUs. I said consoles. I meant to say the next generation of GPUs. You should be able to spend the same amount of money that you'd have to spend on a console to be able to game at 4K on a PC. That's how it's going to be. So that's the reason why I think 1440p is never going to fully... 1440p is never going to replace 1080p. The way 1080p replaced like CRT monitors and like 1280 by 1024 resolution. It's never... By the time 1440p will be capable of fully replacing 1080p, 4K gaming will be so much more affordable that people are just going to upgrade to 4K instead. Because films are typically 4K. Live streaming services like Hulu, Amazon Prime Instant Video, Disney Plus, Netflix, they all offer the 4K tier streaming, like the premium tier. So it's like, why would somebody buy a 1440p monitor if they want to watch content in true 4K at full native pixel density, you know, when 4K panels get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because OLED keeps pushing into the market, and then TN and IPS and VA and all that stuff, all those panel technology become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, then 4K is going to become mainstream. That's when it's going to happen. It's just going to take a little bit longer because of the way things are with pricing and stuff. And I'm not saying this because I dislike 1440p. I've always liked 1440p. I upgraded to 1440p in 2017. So, like, for me, 1440p is already kind of old school. "4K's standard TVs are 4K, not..." Exactly. Like 1440 is kind of that weird intermediary resolution. "There are a billion gamers. Enthusiasts are now in the millions." I don't think enthusiasts are in the millions. I think you're overestimating average. Okay, gamers, yes. Enthusiasts, no. No, I don't think so. The average, so like, because, okay, I talk to people all the time. People come to me all the time asking, like, what should I upgrade to? What should I do? And like they'll give me a scenario. And like I'll tell you guys a recent one that we actually answered on the channel. Somebody had like, we were doing a live stream. Somebody in the chat said, what should they do? Should they buy a this is during the Black Friday deals. So this is like in November. So one of their coworkers was offering to sell the 2080 Ti that they had for $300. So they're going to sell them the 2080 Ti for $300. The other option was buy something new off of like Newegg, you know, some Black Friday. Basically buy the AMD cards that come with 2 free games. So I told him, it's up to you. If you want those 2 games, if you want the warranty, because you get, you know, the 2-3 year warranty with buying a brand new card, I would probably say get the 6700 XT or the 6750 XT. But that's going to be a little bit more money than the $300 for a used 2080 Ti. Ultimately, he ended up buying the 2080 Ti off of his coworker for $300. So, was it worth it? Maybe. But these are the sort of people that are not going to go and buy, you know, like an enthusiast grade hardware. Because in 2022, the 2080 Ti is not an enthusiast product anymore. It is just a mainstream card. It's like an upper mid-range card. You know, it's like a 2080 Ti is basically like a 6700 XT or maybe a 6750 XT, which puts it kind of like near a 3070. So that's not an enthusiast tier product. So, and most people have that kind of thinking when they're going to upgrade. Not, you know, a lot of people aren't just going to go and buy, you know, like an XTX or a 4090. It's like very few people actually do that. But even so, my enthusiast gamer brain doesn't really know what average people are thinking about high-end computer. I'll tell you, I deal with... So we're talking about average gamers. I deal with a lot of average gamers. And what I will tell you is that the most common discussion, anytime we talk about upgrading PC hardware, they're always talking about stuff like Ryzen 5, so like 5600X, or maybe the 7600X, or maybe an Intel i5, maybe an Intel i7, but they usually never pull the trigger on the i7 because they think it's too much money for what they're going to do. And they're actually right. Same thing with the Ryzen 7. A couple of people bought the X3D because they already had an AM4 motherboard. So it was a logical upgrade. It wasn't like a splurge and buy like a whole new AM5 platform. See? So that's kind of how they think. And it's like, if they choose between DDR4 and DDR5, it's like, yeah, DDR5 is the future. It's cool. It's the new best thing. But it's like, nope, they're just going to stick with DDR4. The average gamer is just going to try to recycle and reuse as much of their old computer as possible. And like, if I start telling you the RAM speeds, like the memory speeds on the DDR4 are anywhere from like 2666 to like 3000 megahertz, maybe 3200 megahertz. But the average gamer isn't really rocking like 3600 megahertz DDR4. It's usually something slower than that. And the CPU, if they built it themselves, it's usually going to be either an Intel Core i5 or a Ryzen 5, maybe a Ryzen 7, and that's only because Ryzen 7 was mostly more affordable than an Intel i7 for many, many years until recently now, obviously. You know, but even now, though, the i7 is very expensive. Like a 13700K is not an easily affordable processor by any means. So, you know, that's the reason why the Intel Core i5 is still kind of the go-to. If we're talking about Intel, the Core i5 is my recommendation for a gaming CPU on the Intel side. And if we're talking AMD, there's a little bit more options. It's a little bit more complicated there. Because obviously there's the X3D, and there's a lot of people on AM4. The most common processor that I have seen people using is either a Ryzen 2700X or a 2600X or a 3600 non-X. Those are the most common gaming PCs that I've seen people propose, like, what should I upgrade? And this is what I've got. You know, occasionally someone will have a really, really old system. Like I helped somebody last year upgrade from a really, really old Intel Haswell Devil's Canyon, so a 4790K. You know, usually someone, but those are really rare. Like some people, not everybody's on like those ancient DDR3 systems, and that's where I would turn them over to DDR5, because the way I see it is if somebody is still on DDR3 and they held out this long and they got that many years out of their old DDR3 platform, you know, now is a good time to spend the extra money and just start with DDR5, completely skip DDR4, forget about the 5800X3D, forget about like the kind of value you save on getting DDR4, because you're already on DDR3 today. You have to buy new memory. Yes, DDR5 costs more money than DDR4, but why would you go from your old DDR3 to DDR4 when you can literally just double leapfrog and go straight to DDR5? See, that's where DDR5 makes more sense, and that's where like the Ryzen AM5 platform actually makes sense, especially next month when the new X3D CPUs come out. So I mean, that's typically what you'll find when you're dealing with people who primarily play games with their PC and they don't really consider themselves an enthusiast, or if they consider themselves an enthusiast, it's more like a budget-oriented enthusiast. I don't really know what you classify them as. I wouldn't really call them an enthusiast. I only consider someone an enthusiast if they have like a 3080 or a 6800 XT or better. Like that's kind of where it starts. Like anybody who has like a 3070 Ti, that's not enthusiast. Anybody who has like a 6750 XT or 6700 XT, that's not enthusiast. That's mainstream. Yeah, like, I mean, that's what I would do. I literally am telling people, like, what I would do. Like, if I were in their situation, if I still had an old Intel i7 from 2014, and I was on DDR3, and I'm going to buy a new computer, or I'm going to build a new computer, I am definitely going to skip DDR4. 100%. Because you got to think about it like this. If I got that many years out of my computer, you can afford to spend the extra money to get a newer computer because you don't upgrade that often, right? Like, Staying put from DDR3 to DDR5 would be such an insane jump. Yeah, exactly. See, that it's a no-brainer at that point. But the average person who's upgrading their old ancient PC from 8 years ago or 9 years ago, they don't know, like, they don't necessarily know which ones use DDR5 and which ones use DDR4. For CPU, you went with 3900K. 3900K is good, but I really think 3900K, I would never recommend that for gaming. Like, it's, now honestly, I would never recommend the 7950X for gaming either. Like, I don't think either one of those CPUs are meant for gaming. Like, those CPUs are meant for workstation or like prosumer workloads. They're really, really not meant for gaming. Yeah, that's why I don't recommend it for gaming. It's too impractical. First of all, it's way too expensive just for a gaming PC, because you guys know, like, honestly, and that video with Gordon and the guy from BPS Customs, he even said, like, in a blind test, if I showed you two PCs side by side, one of them has a, well, you know, like a i9 or a Ryzen 9, and the other PC next to it had an i5 or a Ryzen 5, and it's complete blind test, same GPU. Good luck trying to guess which one's on which CPU. No FPS counter, obviously no FPS counter, so no overlay. You have to literally guess and figure out which one has the i9 and which one has the i5. Good luck trying to figure out if you're right. It's basically a coin toss. It's basically a 50-50 guess. So, do I recommend i9 and Ryzen 9 for gaming? No, I don't. No, I don't. I never will. $13,700 is such... $13,600 is... Well... If you only play games, disable the E-cores. But see, okay. Here's the thing. So Kevin's saying disable the E-cores. The problem... Okay, there is... I understand the logic behind that statement. However, the thing with that statement is it's like... You spent money to buy those E-cores. Or he spent money, or she spent money to buy those E-cores, right? Like, the consumer, when they buy a 13700K, or a 13600K, or 13900, whatever, any big core, little core part from Intel, they spent money to buy those E-cores. So it's like, why would you turn off the E-cores? That's literally throwing money in the trash. You're a video producer, so yeah. Is overkill for what I need it for, yeah. Yeah, it is. It really is. I would wait for the X3D if you want a high-end Ryzen 8 core CPU. Yeah. Honestly, gaming... So, for gaming, the most consistent experience is going to be an 8-core, 16-thread CPU. So basically a Ryzen 7. Single CCD, 8-core... 16 thread, that's the most optimal gaming CPU. Now you can go down to a 6-core, 12 thread, and it will still be really good. But I just think like $100 more gets you 2 more cores, you know, 4 more threads. I just think that's kind of worth it. I mean, to me, it makes sense. The Intel ones are kind of weird because those E-cores, like the E-cores. You gotta factor in the E-cores. Like, I just don't see why. Like, with Alder Lake, I turned off my E-cores. Okay, here's the thing. With Alder Lake, I disabled the E-cores. Hold on. Let me move the chat over here. Actually, what I'll do, since we're done with this game, let's get paint. Hold on, I gotta. Where is it? Okay, here's paint. Man, that's really bright. But let me get out of the game because I don't need the game up anymore. Okay. So here's the thing with you almost rolled a 750X. Okay, hold on. Let me here. The comment about the E-cores is a really good comment because it's worth talking about. So here's the thing with Intel. So this we're gonna take 2 Intel CPUs for illustration here. One of them is 12th gen, the other one is 13th gen. So this one is going to be my i7-12700K, and this one, so this one's gonna be 13700K. i7-13700K. Well, actually, well, we can do i9. We'll talk about the i9 in a little bit. There's a big difference here. So, if you bought an Alder Lake 12th generation, these had 8 core. Well, that didn't work. I wanted to copy that. There it is. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we're gonna need more space. This isn't gonna look right because this is not how this is supposed to look. But you guys get the idea. It's the drawing doesn't look accurate at all because all the cores are supposed to be on this end, and then the E cores are like down here. But anyway, I'm just gonna have to draw it in a weird way. This is obviously not gonna look how it's supposed to look, but just pretend like those are the P cores, and then we've got a bunch of like E cores down here. So the thing with Alder Lake, so we'll just say this. Whoops. Okay, it doesn't want to do what I'm wanting it to do. So these are the E cores. You can see they're really, really puny. They're really, really small compared to the P cores. So here's the thing about the i7 specifically. When I bought this CPU on launch day, November 4th, 2021, I paired it up with DDR4 because we all know DDR5 was way too expensive. So I didn't have to buy any memory. Fun fact, I never had to buy any memory for like any of these upgrades that I did. So with 12th gen, I stuck with my DDR4. I just recycled my DDR4. And with Ryzen, with these, I literally got free memory from Micro Center. So it's like, okay, I never had to buy DDR5, and I never had to do anything with 12th gen, because like you couldn't really buy, like unless you wanted to spend like $600 on RAM for like 32 gigabytes of memory in 2021 for DDR5, it's like, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. So I paired up with this. Now here's the thing. So what I did, and I said this before, is I turned all of these off because, like what was mentioned earlier, I gotta find the comment. Where's the comment? So I think Kevin had mentioned turn the E-cores off. I'm trying to find the comment when you guys were talking about turning the E-cores off. So anyway, like, yeah. With Alder Lake, yes, turn the E-cores off because they are garbage. They are literally garbage. Here's the big difference. The big difference is the E-cores. The E-cores on Alder Lake are like 3.7 gigahertz max for the E-cores. Like the E-cores are slow. They're so slow. I think that's what they are. And it might even be slower than that. I think this is actually. I think I'm wrong. I think this is the base speed of the Raptor Lake E-cores. I don't remember. But anyway, the bottom line is these are so slow. They're so insignificant. On a 12700K, there's only 4 of them. You turn them off. Who cares? You've taken your 20-thread CPU and you've turned it into a 16-thread CPU. So now it literally is the same as a Ryzen 5800X or a Intel i7-11700K, my favorite Intel CPU ever. Well, maybe. We'll see. But, you know, you turn it into one of these, but it's a lot more consistent in its performance because you don't have these terrible, slow E-cores that anytime... and granted, here's the other thing that I forgot to mention. Windows 10. We're talking about Windows 10. I am using Windows 10. I am not using Windows 11. I'm not going to Windows 11. I'm staying on Windows 10. So it's like... It's like... Why would I go to... Like, why would I turn the E-cores on if Windows 10 is going to be dumb and assign a task to this guy... And then the next task is going to go to one of these guys because it doesn't know how to tell, you know, one of them from the other. And, you know, this dude up here, the P-core can go up to like, you know, 5.1 or whatever it was. I don't remember. But it's like there's such a difference between this and this in terms of the clock speed that, like, you get latency issues. Some applications have weird performance regressions because of that. So it was never a good experience. Bottom line is I never had a good experience with Alder Lake on Windows 10 with DDR4. It bricked one of my AverMedia capture cards when I tried to upgrade the firmware. It literally bricked the card on me. I had to take the card out and plug it into my AMD motherboard to basically reflash the card and rescue it so I didn't have to RMA it. So I had stupid problems with Final Fantasy XIV crashing to desktop. And I suspect it was because of these dumb E-cores. I fixed the issue by turning all 4 E-cores off, and then I never had that problem anymore. That issue, as far as I know, I never revisited the problem. So it's like I never tried to turn the E-cores back on to see if they ever fixed it. So it's like... I never had a really good experience with Alder Lake. That's with Windows 10. That's all I'm saying. Now, memory stability, DDR4, it was good. The memory controller was fine with DDR4. Now, I remember people talking about how DDR5... Wait, why is it deleting everything? Well, anyway, I remember people saying, like, Alder Lake, DDR5, you can't clock that high. You can't really go above, you know, 6400 on 2 sticks. That if you try to do 4 sticks, you're stuck on 4800. So basically the same story with Ryzen's AM5 platform. So I expect Raptor Lake is going to be better with DDR5. So there are some improvements there because it's the second generation of their DDR5 IMC. So you would expect it to be better. Now here's the reason why I do not recommend turning E-cores off for the Raptor Lake. Actually, what I should do is I should be smart. I should just copy these guys and place them over here. So there's a big difference. And the difference only becomes more noticeable as you go up the stack. So it's like if we're talking about the i7, the difference is here you have, not only do you have 4 of these, you actually have 8 of them. So now you have 8 E-cores. This is basically like a 12900K in terms of how many E-cores it has. So you have double the amount of E-cores. But the thing that a lot of people don't know, the reason why a 13700K is always better than a 12900K, and it's always better than a 12900KS, is because the E-cores on Raptor Lake go to 4.3 gigahertz. They go to 4.3 gigahertz. They are significantly faster than these. This is actually the boost clock of the Raptor Lake. I don't even know what the actual speed on this is. I think it's actually slower than 3.7. If someone wants to look that up for me, feel free to do that, because I don't think this is the right number. I think it's actually slower than this. But anyway, the point is, the E-cores on Raptor Lake are faster to the point where you don't actually suffer that much of a performance penalty. The other thing, too, is there's way more of them. There's like double the amount of E-cores on every single SKU. The i5 has 8 E-cores. Even the i5 has the exact same amount of E-cores. Now, what happens when you go to the i9? Well, we know what happens. This is where it gets really interesting. So actually, I'll just do this. Let's look at another CPU. Let's look at another Raptor Lake CPU. i9, 13, that leads us to this guy. So, this one, you guys probably know where I'm going with this. This one gets really interesting because this one has 16 E-cores. This one has 16 E-cores. Okay, let's think about that for a second. What is the E-core? What is a Raptor Lake E-core and an Alder Lake E-core equal to in terms of IPC? Well, it's equal to Skylake. What is a Skylake processor? An E-core equals an i7 6700K's IPC, roughly. So think about that. That means that a 13900K literally has 16 Skylake cores. 16 Skylake cores. That means that a 13900K with just the E-cores alone is better than the X299 Skylake X. It's better than Skylake X. Because not only does it have 16 Skylake IPC cores, it has 8 big performance cores on top of that. This is the reason why the 13900K is actually a very good prosumer workstation computer. That is the reason why I have one. That is the reason why yours truly actually has a 13900K. So I do have the 13900K, and I have it because of what I just told you. Remember what I told you guys early on. Like, why did I buy this CPU? Was it a waste of money? It's questionable. It is very questionable. But you guys remember that I do not intend to use the 13900K for gaming. I use it as a NAS home server and also for rendering. I use it for rendering. I don't use this I don't use 13900K like as a gaming CPU. That is a massive waste of money for a gaming CPU. I'm being completely transparent. It is not meant to be a gaming CPU. Now, Intel will obviously try to market it to gamers. Why? Because they want the money. They want people to buy it. So if they can fling it into the mainstream market and have enough people just buy it up just because of marketing hype, so be it. So this is actually a really nice alternative to the lack of HEDT. So in my mind, the 13900K is a good alternative to HEDT. What is HEDT? HEDT is high-end desktop. That was the old X299 Skylake X. It is also the successor, or it is also what AMD's Threadripper 1000 and 2000 series were. This is the HEDT platform. Or, okay, this is Intel's that, and this is AMD's Threadripper. So that's the way I looked at the 1300K. Because a lot of people, like, I remember Joel, we talked about this, Joel and I talked about this briefly. Like, the 1300K was kind of a waste of money, but the way I look at it is I don't intend to use it as a gaming PC. So, in my use case, it is actually justifiable. Okay, hold on. I need to catch up with the comments. Puffin's saying the 1200K Z-Course boost to 4. Okay, but they're still slower than the 13700s. Intel doing big things. You should have bought the 4090 instead of getting through. I mean, yeah, but the 4090 is like really, really hard to find. 3900KS is even worse. 3900KS is a waste of money. Like, okay, all the 12900KS and the 13900KS are a waste of money. I will never, ever, ever recommend either of these CPUs. Like, never. You'll never hear me ever recommending those CPUs. I will never buy one. I don't intend to buy one. You'll never see those covered on this channel ever. They're a big waste of money because you can literally overclock the 13900K to 6 gigahertz. The Gigabyte BIOS that I have on my Z790 motherboard literally has a auto 6 gigahertz mode specifically for the 1300K. So that is a massive waste of money. Okay, so which... So yeah. So going back to what I was saying about the workstation stuff. I use this as a workstation because I originally wanted to buy a Threadripper. I wanted to buy a newer Threadripper. But we all know what happened. AMD killed off, or they replaced X399 with TRX40, which was the 3000 series, which I never managed to get. And I wasn't about to go and buy a CPU series from 2019 in 2022. So that's the reason why I didn't buy that. And that's ultimately the reason why I bought the 13900K, because AMD did not release a newer Threadripper. Now, I know AMD has the Threadripper Pro 5000 series, but have you guys looked at how much a Threadripper 5000 series, a Threadripper Pro CPU costs? A Threadripper Pro, one core is $100. It's literally $100 per core, which means if you want a 32-core Threadripper, that is $3,200 just for the CPU. So when everybody and their dog are complaining about AM5 motherboards being so expensive, and the i9 is so expensive, and the Ryzen 9 is so expensive, when I look at these processors, and I look at how much a Threadripper Pro 5000 costs, I'm thinking no, because literally I can upgrade to 2 separate desktops for less money than one Threadripper PC. And that allows me to scale a lot more, because you guys understand, like, well, you kind of do understand. I use one of these for streaming. I use the Ryzen 9 for the live content, and I use it for a lot of, like, what we're doing here. And then on the back end, I use the 13900K behind the scenes for a lot of, like, the post stuff. So it makes sense. See? So if you, I mean, a lot of people don't look at, like, Enterprise and HEDT and Workstation, but Workstation costs way, way more money than the 13900K or the Ryzen 9 could ever hope to cost. So when I look at, like, how much the alternative costs, I think AM5 is a bargain. That's why I never complained about the price of, like, the AM5 motherboards. Yes, they're expensive from a consumer's mind or point of view, but, you know, like, if you're looking at it from, like, a, you know, workstation side, they don't really look that bad. That and the fact that, you buy one of these, you get free DDR5, hello, that's like subsidizing the cost even further. So, you can use this CPU as a workstation. Yeah, I can. I can do that. The only problem with doing that is, and now it's not so much of a problem anymore, because now I do have this PC over here for the gaming, for the test bench. But like I said it before, like the thing is, ultimately one of the CPUs or one of the computers had to be a test bench. And if I'm going to use it as a test bench, I can't really use it as like live content, or you can't really use it as a home server. You can't really, you don't really want to use a home server. You can't use a home server to tear it apart and swap out GPUs all the time. So it's like, I can do that. Or actually, okay, it's not like I can do it. I was doing that with this computer. I was swapping the GPU with the Ryzen 9, but it got to the point where it was like, I'm constantly having to change drivers, delete stuff, like having to do all the presets over again. It got to the point where it's too disruptive compared to just like having that on a test bench and then just like leaving this computer as a static configuration and not having to mess with it anymore. Like that, I needed that, because it's like, no, it's just too much. It's like too much trouble to tear apart your desktop that you use on a daily basis for that. And it's like, okay, the alternative was like run the 13900K as the test bench, but then that means I would have to use my Ryzen computer as the NAS, the home server, but I also use it for like live streaming and YouTube. So it's like, it seems kind of weird. I kind of want to keep like some level of separation there between those two. Like, I'm not gonna run it in a VM or anything, because that doesn't make any sense either. So, yeah. So that's the reason why I have a 13900K. But people who buy the 13900K for gaming, like I really think it's almost like, I don't want to say that you guys, anyone who bought a 13900K, it's not like you got scammed by Intel for buying it for gaming. I'm just saying that there are so many other more optimal use cases for the 13900K's hardware that it just, to me, seems like it's so hard to justify spending, whatever, like $500 something or $600 on just a CPU just to play games. That doesn't make any sense. You bought the 13900K so you can flex on brokies. See, I don't know about that. Like, to me, that just kind of further drives sort of this weird, like, materialistic culture that is kind of permeating the society. I just don't think that's a really good thing. I don't really think we need stuff like that, to be honest. I mean, it's good that you have it, but I don't know. I just think it's kind of excessive, unless you're actually going to use it for stuff other than just gaming. Oh, yeah. Good. Okay. Excellent segue by Joel, pivoting now to an actual topic that is more in line with what we were supposed to talk about on this stream. So, you don't buy hardware to flex on people? Yeah, and I don't buy hardware to flex on people either. Well, see, so if I really, really wanted to get that 4090, I would have gotten that 4090 on launch day when I walked into Micro Center on the launch day for the 4090 and ARC. I turned down the opportunity to buy that 4090 because I could have gotten one. I could have got that Zotac that day and walked out of there, and I would have had a 4090. So if I wanted the 4090, I could have gotten it. But I didn't. I don't buy it just to flex on people. I'm not gonna do that. So it's like, if I wanted it, I would get it. But it's like, no. I got the ARC A770 instead, because in my mind, that's actually a really good value GPU. And it's only gonna get better over time, provided that Intel continues to execute their long-term roadmap for their graphics division, and hopefully they will. So that's the reason why I feel like ARC is definitely way more interesting But yeah, like I agree with Joel. Like I don't buy stuff just to flex on people, because it's like I just think that's kind of it just caused. Yeah, I know you were kidding, but it's like it's one of those things where there's too much of a problem right now. Where you guys can tell if we look at like the economy, where it's weird because it's like we're in a weird situation where housing is hard to get and prices are sky high, yet people are just spending. And it's just so much consumption. And I think that's part of the reason why so many things are so expensive, because as long as people keep paying those high prices for things like NVIDIA graphics cards, that's just going to keep the price high. So anyway, yeah, let's talk about the Ark. Or not an Ark. Let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy, because I think that's what I want to do with this. Actually, let's cut this, I guess, or let's move this down, I guess, or whatever. Actually, we'll just delete this because we don't need this anymore. That was a good diagram, though. I like my little picture of the 13900K. So let's talk about Hogwarts, because Hogwarts Legacy, I will be streaming that game on the channel. So it's like, yay, I finally won't be streaming Genshin Impact anymore. I'm trying to take a break from that game anyway, but me need to take a break from that game, and hopefully we'll be able to change the pace on what we show in terms of games. Because I do want to play a game that is more graphically intensive on the hardware, especially considering like what I'm working with here. But you blame Joel for buying the overpriced 4080. Well, I mean, I bought the XTX, and that's overpriced too, right? So, and I bought the XT. So it's like if I really wanted to get the 4090, I could get the 4090, but I'm not gonna do that. So for Ultra, explaining with diagram and pictures the best. Yeah. So Hogwarts Legacy, they recently published. Actually, you know what? The easiest thing I can do. Let me just look up the image. I'm just gonna find like Hogwarts Legacy. Let me find that image real quick. Let me grab it here. So I just... Oh, this isn't going to display well on the stream. I need to find like a larger one of it. Well, we'll just kind of type them up. So basically, they published their final, they call it final specs for the game. No, yeah, Joel likes ray tracing. Joel's like, especially path tracing, so he'll definitely use it. So let's talk about these ultra specs, because you know my channel typically talks about enthusiast grade hardware a lot. We just finished talking about 13900K and where it actually makes sense. But let's talk about these. So they did ultra specs and they did ultra 4K specs. So if you go to the Steam page only lists the minimum and the recommended. But if you look at the details on the minimum is only for 720. I think it's 720p, and then the recommended is 1080p. But what we're going to talk about is the ultra specs, because we're talking about the enthusiast grade hardware. We're talking about like what it actually takes to run this game at 4K max settings, because it gets really interesting. So what's weird is they specify ultra and then they do ultra 4K. So when they say ultra, they're actually talking about 1440p. So they say you need either an i7 10700K or a Ryzen 7 5800X. You need 32 gigabytes of RAM. You need a DX12 GPU. So we're just kind of ignore that, because pretty much all modern GPUs can do the DX12 part. But here's what's interesting. For the GPU, they are specifying an RTX 2080 Ti or a Radeon RX 6800 XT. Now, this is interesting to me because there is quite a difference between these two GPUs. Like, pretty much an entire tier difference. This is more like a 6750 XT, and this is more like, you know, a 3080. So it's like, that's kind of weird in terms of, like, why is there such a gap between those two? But I don't know, maybe there's a typo. Maybe they meant 3080 Ti. Maybe they meant 6800 non-XT. I don't know. But they're saying you want an SSD, 85 gigabytes SSD space is what they're recommending, or I guess that's what you need. And then 1440p, 60 FPS. And they say ultra quality, so that's basically what you need for ultra. So that's kind of what they're specifying, which is interesting. The 1440p specs for the 2080 Ti doesn't make sense. Maybe it runs better on NVIDIA. I mean, it could. So what I find interesting about this, though, is this sort of kind of hints at the possibility that the game will support ray tracing, because the ray tracing performance on the 6800 XT is more in line with the 20 series NVIDIA cards, right? So, because AMD started later, RDNA 2's RT performance is basically their first generation, so it's more in line with NVIDIA's first generation. So this, to me, sort of indicates that perhaps there might be ray tracing as a preset or a setting they can turn on in the game. And then if that's the case, then these GPU specs actually make sense all of a sudden. Doesn't make sense if it's going to be released on PS5 and Series X. Those are both already two. Yeah, but you know what they can do with the PC or with the console version. They can, the consoles, they all, for some reason consoles are always better optimized for a lot of games that are multi-plat anyway. So that's the way I see it. So I kind of think that there's a possibility that this game might support ray tracing because there's a difference between these two in terms of the tier. But when you evaluate them on their RT performance, they're actually quite similar. So that might be a thing. So that's kind of why I think that might be the reason why there's different specs there. But here's where it gets really interesting. So the Ultra 4K. So here the CPU didn't actually change. They're still saying 700 or 10700K and the Ryzen 7 5800X. I find that interesting. That just means that CPUs from 2020 are good enough, because both of these CPUs from 2020. And then 32 GB doesn't change, but the graphics cards change. So this is where it's crazy different. So whereas those GPUs are what they're recommending for 4K or for 1440p, for 4K they're saying you need and I'm not making this up. This is straight from their Twitter post. You need an RTX 3090 Ti, not a 3080 Ti, a 3090 Ti, or this is even more funny, or the GPU that everybody said has a terrible price because it's too close to the XTX, but they literally show that right here, you know, and then everything else is kind of the same. So again, 85 GB and the SSD, whatever, and then you get 4K. They're saying 2160p, 60 FPS. This is 60 FPS. You need those type of GPUs for 60 FPS. Ultra. Yeah, you're gonna need a 3090 Ti if you actually want to drive this game, or the 7900 XT. So that's ridiculous. I'm not making that up. That's actually what it says right there. It's hard to read on the screen, but that's literally, I just, snipped that from their Twitter post. So it's like, that's insane. Like, that's what you need for 60 FPS 4K. Now, granted, this is ultra quality. And here's the thing, the other thing that's interesting is... Remember what I said earlier about the ray tracing? So if this game supports ray tracing, these GPUs actually make sense. Because the 7900 XT and the 3090 Ti aren't too far apart from each other in RT. They're kind of similar. And then the thing is, the 7900 XT is a tiny bit better than the 3090 Ti. Well, it's a little bit better than the 3090 Ti. Not a tiny bit. But we're talking like 3%. 3 to 5% faster in favor of the Radeon card. And that's the reason why the 4070 Ti is already DOA. The 4070 Ti is weaker than the 3090 Ti, and that automatically, reinforces that it's weaker than the 7900 XT. So much for 4070 Ti. If you need a 3090 Ti or a 700 XT for Hogwarts Legacy, yeah, that GPU just launched, and now it's already kind of not cutting it for Ultra on 4K 60. So now you see why I didn't even bother to talk too much about that graphics card. So Puffin's locked and ready to go. 2160. 2160p at 60 FPS. 4080 should be able to do it. Yes, yeah. Joel, you're good. The 4080 is good enough. That's above the 3090 Ti. Time for the 4090, I guess. Need an XTX. An XXTX. Yeah, so literally, okay, what that means is that there's only a handful of GPUs that are actually above their recommended for Ultra 4K. Like, what are they? Obviously, the RTX 4080. Well, we'll go from the top down, right? Like, 4090, in terms of rasterization, 4090, then the 7900 XTX, then you have the 4080, and that's it. That's it. There are only 3 GPUs. There are only 3 GPUs that are above the recommended specs. Or the recommended, the recommended system requirements for this game. And they literally only launched like a couple months ago. In fact, one of them was literally last month. That's crazy. So I don't know what that says. That kind of worries me a little bit, but in one sense it doesn't. Like, this just tells me that it's possible that this game will have ray tracing included. And that, the game... I'll be honest, the game does look really good. Like, the graphics of the game, if you guys haven't seen the gameplay footage of Hogwarts Legacy, definitely check it out. It looks promising. The graphics look really good. From what I've seen, the combat, like the wizard combat, looks pretty good. The spells, the spell effects, what you can do in the game, like you can customize the room of requirement. The fact that you'll be able to actually explore the giant Hogwarts castle and explore the outside area, it looks like it's going to be a really good game. Imagine seeing a game come out with a 4090 as a recommend. That would paint a very negative picture. That if a game came out and said that it recommends 4090, that would be like, do you guys not know how to optimize your game? Are you literally relying on the 4090 to brute force through your terribly coded game? That's the way that would look to me if a game actually came out and recommended 4090. Someone brought up a Plague Tale Requiem, and that game looks incredible and very spec heavy and doesn't have a ray tracing implementation currently. Yeah, but see, the thing is, the reason why I kind of think that the reason why I think they're listing these is because the RT on these, like the RT on these two will be good enough. The RT performance on those two will be good enough for 4K 60, in my mind. I don't think that they're going to go with some insane, crazy path tracing approach. because this is going to be on the consoles, I highly doubt it. If they do have RT, it'll be like Resident Evil, maybe Far Cry 6, or some light ray trace, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It'll be something like that where it's not insane crazy, like dropping your FPS so much. So like RDNA 3 and 30 series have similar RT performance, so they get the job done. And then like with the 1440p, if there's RT, like 1440p, depending on the approach, I'm assuming it's not going to be insane RT taxing. So it's like, yeah, these two will do just fine at that resolution. Who was the dev on this? That's an interesting question. It is Avalanche Software is the developer. And the publisher is Warner Brothers Games. So basically, Warner Brothers, WB, they're the ones who published Multiverses last year. So, the devs though, like Avalanche, what did they make? They haven't made a game in a while. Like I think the last time they made a game was like 2017 was when they published a game. I don't know. I'd have to look them up. If you need a 6800 XT for 1440p, does that mean the PS5 will be running the game at around? Yeah, probably. I think the PS5 and the Xbox. Well, I think what the PS5 will do. When I saw these system specs, I thought the first thing that came into my mind, the first thought was, I can't wait to see Digital Foundry do a tech deep dive video on this game, looking at the consoles. The PC is gonna be interesting, but the consoles especially, because to answer Joel's point on that, I think what will end up happening with the PS5 and the Xbox is they're gonna have to do dynamic resolution scaling. So in certain where the camera's still and you're not moving around, or it's not doing a whole lot. Or you're like inside a building and it's not like having to have a massive amount of draw distance, then the resolution will be higher. But if you go outside, where the mountains are in the background and the sky and the global illumination and the foliage, I think in those scenarios, I'm pretty sure the consoles are going to drop significantly in their dynamic resolution down to 1080p even. So that's what I think is going to happen. But obviously we won't really know until Digital Foundry does their video. I'm pretty sure with a big name like this, Harry Potter universe type game, Hogwarts Legacy, pretty much guarantee Digital Foundry is going to do a video like that. Do the consoles do FSR? Not FSR, but yeah, I think they do FSR too. Yeah, they do FSR too. But yeah, I think they could leverage that in this game. Definitely, right? Like if we're looking at these sort of system specs, also Disney games, so we don't really know what they're gonna do. Well, this isn't a Disney game. This is Warner Brothers, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I think there's going to be dynamic resolution scaling on the consoles, though. That's the only way that this is going to be obtainable. The CPU is interesting because, honestly, these CPUs... Let me just get rid of these circles. These CPUs are pretty high spec. These are pretty high-end CPUs for a single-player game. That's the reason why this also does kind of raise some eyebrows about how well optimized the game is. Because I would have expected, maybe Zen 2, a 3800X. And I mean the 10700K makes sense just generation wise, because the thing about the 10700K, this only can do PCI Gen 3. The 10700K, one of the limiting factors, it is getting kind of old, but it's still a good CPU. It just can't do PCI 3, it can't do PCI 4, or 5 for that matter. But you know, you get what I'm saying. Like, it's stuck on PCI 3, and the platform's kind of old. So but these are interesting choices of CPU. Like, because I would have thought you wouldn't need that much of CPU power for a single player game. Like, there's no co-op that at least that I know of. But maybe it's like Plague Tale Requiem, where, like, you know, the comment earlier about Plague Tale Requiem, that kind of makes sense. And this is made by a smaller developer. I mean, well, I'm sure, like, they got a big budget from WB to go and, like, hire a bunch of devs or something, but, or contract some of the back end part for the code base or whatever they have to do, right? Like, it's a pretty big budget title relative to what that studio has done in the past. Oh, the dev made a bunch of Disney games? Okay. You think this game is using I think this game is using multi-thread rendering. Yeah, I mean, that would kind of make sense, because it's weird, because it's like single player games typically don't need more than an i5 or like a Ryzen 5. But these are actually wanting you to, or they're recommending i7. That's a lot. Yeah, they're recommending 8-core 16-thread CPUs. And that's what I was saying earlier, right? Like, in my mind, I think for a very consistent gaming experience, 8-core 16-thread on a monolithic die, meaning single CCD or a single Intel CPU, no E-core nonsense. Like, I still think that gives you the most consistent gaming experience, because there's no weird cross-assigning tasks, slow E-cores. There's no, like, cross CCD latency, you know, with a Ryzen 9. So that's the reason why I do think, like, in terms of gaming, specifically gaming, I'm not talking about workstation, I'm not talking about high-end desktop, I'm talking about gaming. I still think, like, 8-core 16-thread is the sweet spot, and it's probably still going to be a sweet spot for a very long time, because I don't really see a lot of incentive, unless we're talking about multiplayer games. Maybe multi-threading on multiplayer games, online games, maybe. But for single-player games, I don't really know why you would need more than 16 threads for a game. Like, that's a lot. So, kind of Ryzen 7 and an i7 10 or 11th gen are kind of where it sort of maxes out. And then anything above that is where you start hitting massive amounts of diminishing returns, because throwing E-cores at something isn't going to improve performance. And then, like, adding Ryzen cores on another CCD isn't necessarily going to improve performance either. So, it kind of maxes out at the Ryzen 7 and the i7, the old school i7s. But that's interesting, though. You know, 8-core 16-thread. Yeah, I can do probably a lot of content on this game, because from like GPU analysis or GPU comparisons, because I have both of these GPUs, so I'm good there and I'm good there. So I can show you guys, like, I can bench the game on 3090 Ti and 7900 XT, but I can't do these, so that's not gonna work. I don't have those. I've got this too. Obviously, when I live stream the game, it's gonna be on the XTX. But I could stream it on the XT as well, just to kind of show. I'm just thinking, like, if I live stream the game and we're doing, like, technical analysis of the game's performance, it would make sense to live stream using the XT, or maybe also the 3090 Ti. I could do, like, launch stream on one of them, and then, like, another day I could stream, like, with another GPU or one of the other. That would be a good way to show the difference between their encoders too, now that I think about it. Yeah, I might do that, actually. I might do one stream where I stream using the 7900 XT, and we're going to be encoding the footage to YouTube using the new AMD encoder featured on RDNA 3, and then I'll do another stream featuring 3090 Ti. Because here's the thing about the streaming. So I looked into this recently, and I am going to talk about 11th gen Intel, because this is where 11th gen Intel gets really interesting, versus like 10th gen. So, actually, I want to do a text box here. So the cool thing about, so basically, what I learned from NVIDIA, I reached out to somebody at NVIDIA. I asked them, what is the difference in the encoders? And the response that I got was interesting. So what they told me, and this is someone from NVIDIA told me that GTX 10 series uses a different generation of not just the encoder but the decoder. But they told me that RTX 20, 30, and 40 are all the same generation. Meaning the media engine for encoding, so NVENC and NVEDEC decoder, these two are exactly the same on all three generations. So the only difference between the 30 and the 40 and the 20 is that the RTX 4090 and I think the 4080 also have dual encoders. They can dual encode two things simultaneously. That's the only difference. But in terms of the visual quality, the algorithm that NVIDIA is using for block prediction when it does comparative analysis and when it estimates where something is going to move in a frame in its look-ahead buffer is exactly the same. Meaning, they have not made any changes to NVENC and EVDEC, whatever, since Turing. Basically, RTX 2080 will encode and stream the visual quality from an RTX 2080 will be exactly the same as a 3080 and a 4080. There is absolutely no difference in terms of how they've implemented their encoders on these. They're all the same generation. So they're all NVENC. I think he told me it was like Gen 3 or Gen 4 something. Whatever it was of their media engine. Whereas Pascal is definitely older and inferior in terms of how it will encode the blocks, like the frames. He kept using the word blocks, but he meant like frames, and he was talking about buffers and look ahead and all this stuff. So yeah, so that was interesting. So basically what that means is that just like when he was telling this to me, I was like, okay, all the more reason why I don't need to go and buy a 4080 or a 4090 because I already have a 3090 Ti. I can literally like do a visual side-by-side comparative analysis between the 3090 Ti versus a 7900 XT, and then I can even throw in like RDNA 2. You know, I could throw in like the 6900 XT to see how AMD has improved over their last generation. Because from what I understand with AMD, definitely the 7000 series is different from the previous one. So basically RDNA 3, we'll just get rid of this because that's not needed, is different from RDNA 2. So that means AMF, I don't know what AMF, AMD Media, I don't know why they changed the name. I still like VCE. They used to call it VCE, Video Coding Encoder, or video. So I just remember VCE from like old school, like Vega and all that stuff. I think was, no, I don't know about Vega, but AMD used to use something called VCE. Their encoder was actually older than NVIDIA's, like meaning they were first to market and then NVIDIA followed them. But this goes like way back. We're talking like 2011. So you know, more than 10 years ago. But AMF is what AMD calls it now. Because like if you were to open up OBS and you try to configure these settings, like OBS will, if you have an NVIDIA GPU, they'll list it as, NVENC and all that stuff. I think they use the word NVENC. But AMD will be like AMF. Whereas it used to be VCE. Because I looked this up, like if I open up XSplit still calls, they still use the VCE label when you are trying to use the AMD, it's video coding engine or video codec engine, something like that. Like XSplit still uses the old name, even though it's actually not VCE anymore. But that's just a string label in their program. But anyway, you guys get what I'm saying. So basically, RDNA 3 is different from RDNA 2, but RTX 40 series is not different from RTX 30 series in terms of the media engine, the way it works. So that's interesting. That just tells me that, like, really, there's no reason for me to buy a 40 series GPU, because the only thing that the other thing that the 40 series adds is AV1 encoding, because these two don't have AV1 encoding. But that has nothing to do with, like, the NVENC encoder. Like, that's just a different protocol used for the not the container. It's basically the difference between H.264, H.265, and then AV1's like a third one. So that's really the only thing there. And then RDNA 3 is the same way. Like, this includes AV1 encoding, just like ARC and NVIDIA's 40 series, whereas this one didn't have that. But that's just kind of, whatever. But this is actually different. So that'll be interesting to see. So I could get some decent comparative analysis videos using Hogwarts Legacy, because Hogwarts Legacy is a new game that's coming out soon, and it's judging by these specs, it's gonna be really hard to run. So that means it'll have good visuals, and it's the type of game that I'll actually play. Okay, but I think that's pretty much it in terms of that. That's actually a pretty good discussion. So what do you guys think? Are you guys gonna play this game? I think somebody mentioned they'll play it when it's free. So what does that mean? To me, that means either you're gonna wait until no one else or everyone's already played it or whatever. But it's supposed to be on the Steam Deck as well. So it sounds like it's decently optimized if it is going to be fully supported on Steam Deck. Well, I'll be playing it. The other thing, too, about Harry Potter... Or not Harry Potter. I meant to say Hogwarts Legacy. This is... just put this, like, over here or something. So, the other thing cool about that game, though, is there's the 4 houses. There's the Gryffindor... I might butcher these names. Gryffindor. I might have completely misspelled that. I don't know. Actually, you know what? I think there's a Y. Gryffindor. I don't know how to spell these names. I don't know. No, that doesn't look right to me. I think there's a Y in the name. You're more hyped for Wolong? Gryffindor. Someone will correct me if it's wrong. Then there's the Hufflepuff. I think that's right. Ravenclaw. And Slytherin. Slytherin. I don't know how to spell that either. That definitely doesn't look right. Oh man, someone's gonna have to correct me. Slytherin. Okay, it looks like it sounds right phonetically, but it's probably the wrong spelling. But the cool thing about this game is it's got like these schools or these houses that you can choose when you start the game. It's probably going to factor into the story and maybe the ending. So that means that there's going to be multiple endings. I always like games that have multiple endings. Basically, in my mind, if you're going to make a single-player game in 2023, it better have multiple endings, because if it's only a single-player game, where's the replayability there? Obviously, maybe New Game Plus. But what's cool about this is, like, I was reading up on, like, which house to choose and stuff, and they have, like, gameplay footage of the different, I think, dorm rooms or what, like, the common rooms for each of these. And the other thing, too, that I learned was these different houses. I said this at the very beginning of the stream, but I don't think anybody was watching at the time. Like, these are actually these 4 houses actually equate to the 4 different personality temperaments, and I never actually knew that. Now, I'm someone who never read the Harry Potter books, but I did watch the movies, like, way back in the day, like when they were new and stuff, as a kid. So I'm familiar with the movies, but it never occurred to me. I mean, probably as a kid I would obviously not know this, but it's like these 4 different houses actually represent the 4 different personality temperaments. So, like, what do I mean by that? So, like, for example, Hufflepuff, we'll use the color orange, I guess. This is the supporter / healer, I think. Or, I don't want to use the word healer, because people are going to think of it like video game terminology, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, how a person's individual temperament is. So it's like Hufflepuff. Basically, I learned recently when I was researching Hogwarts Legacy, you can actually take, like, a test and figure out which house you belong to based off of your personality. But really, it's like taking, like, a psychology test to see what your base temperament is. And I didn't even know that, but I found that fascinating that, like, this game actually has this sort of thing in it. So basically, Hufflepuff is like the supporter. We'll just use the word supporter. And then, like, Ravenclaw is the thinker. The thinker type. Slytherin is the controller type. And then Gryffindor is the... They use the word oh man, I'm gonna butcher this word too. Sanguine? I think I spelled it correctly. It's like the Myers-Briggs test. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but the thing is, that's more in-depth because... So, the thing about Myers-Briggs is Myers-Briggs divides these into 4 subgroups. So, meaning... You know how there's like the INFJ, INTF, all that stuff? Like, those things are, again, related to this, but the way you figure out those is within each of these 4 quadrants, there are an additional, like, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 4 different ones, 4 different subcategories within each one of these 4. That's how you derive the whole, like, INFJ, INTJ, IN, whatever. Those things are all from this. But the fact that this game has this in it, I thought that was a pretty cool thing. Like, to me, that's kind of cool, because you don't actually see a lot of this in, like, the character creation aspect of a game. Like, I thought that was pretty unique. So, and that's just, So, it's cool, like... It's something that it adds a little bit of depth to the game, I guess. Sort of. So, like, another word for sanguine is entertainer. So, like the Gryffindor type, these are your, like, outgoing, extrovert, lots of energy, always wanting to go on an adventure. Like, they like to travel. They like to be around people. Very friendly, upfront, outgoing, just overall, someone who's really fun to be around. That's typically that personality type. And then, like, the controller type. This is also known as, like, the dominant type. So this is the type of person who, in a positive light, they're like a born leader. These people make really good leaders. They just automatically, naturally assume control of a situation. Like, let's say something catastrophic happens. They'll be the first to sort of, like, put together some kind of action plan for everybody to kind of follow through. Like, that's the controller type. But, there's a lot of negative connotations with the control type, too. So, obviously, like, narcissistic. A lot of, like, the villains in the Harry Potter universe typically come from the Slytherin house. And it makes sense because that personality type tends to breed that sort of persona. Not all the time, obviously you have good controllers, right? Like most leaders tend to be controller types. So it's like type A personality, fast paced, this has to be done like ASAP, let's go, hurry up, let's do this. So that's the Slytherin or the controller type. So that's really interesting. And then there's the other two. So what's cool about this is these two are on this side of the chart because they're both fast-paced, and they also tend to be more of the, they're less indecisive. They're kind of like fly by the seat of your pants type, like more spontaneous, more quick to act, quick to react, more proactive. That's what those two have in common. And then these two are the opposite. So the Hufflepuffs and the Ravenclaws, these are going to be more slow-paced. They tend to either, in the case of Ravenclaw, these guys are like the thinker type. So these guys are going to analyze the situation in depth. They really want to kind of go over all the details. But at the same time, they also see things as a big picture. So they're not going to speak their mind immediately because they don't want to be wrong. So I guess the downside of the Ravenclaws are they tend to be more indecisive, or they're slower to react because they want to make sure that when they react, it's the correct action and it's not the wrong one. So that's kind of different from the other two. And then the supporter type, the Hufflepuff, these are also kind of known as like the feelers or not necessarily that, because I think that's more Myers-Briggs. But these are more like Hufflepuffs. What they say in the lore is like these guys or these girls, whatever, these people are more loyal. Like they value loyalty. They have a sense of justice. So these are sort of people that follow the rules. They don't like chaos. They don't like just things being just unorganized and random. So they're more slower in the sense that they take a more organized approach to things, and things are more orderly. So it's obviously less spontaneous than these two. And then the way it's drawn here, what's interesting is like these two are complete opposites of each other. So they're diagonals, right? Like one of them is very controlling, fast-paced. The other one is slower-paced, take a back seat. You figure this out, just get it done, and I'm just gonna go with whatever you decide. It's typically the Hufflepuff type. They'll be okay with whatever. So they're the opposite. And then like these two are opposites as well. Because one of them is overanalyze the situation, very detail-oriented. The other one, the Sanguine or the Gryffindor, is very spontaneous, very fast-paced. They'll give you a quick answer without fully thinking about the consequences sometimes of what might actually happen from making that decision. So I just found that really cool that that's actually going to be in this game. Like that sort of depth is actually in the game. So. And the game isn't even out yet, so that kind of hypes me up for the game. But there's like a thing, you can actually take a test and figure out, does Gryffindor have the same negative connotation as Slytherin? Negative as in, prone to narcissism? No, not really, because Gryffindor... So the Gryffindor also, I think like one of the other aspects is they tend to be brave, they tend to be bold and adventurous, but the negative aspect of that is they tend to make the wrong decisions. You know, sometimes you need some level of analyzing a situation before you take an action or make a response. And I think that's kind of where they kind of fall short in that regard. So think of it like this. The way I think of it is if you think of a person that you know, the person who is very outgoing, maybe the person could have charisma, or they're very talkative. They speak their mind. They're very spontaneous. If you're at a party, they're the life of the party or the heart of the party. That is a Gryffindor. That's what a Gryffindor is. So people tend to like being around these type of people in a social situation because these people have a lot of positive energy that they tend to bring, you know, the energy or extract the energy out of others in the crowd, just through like sheer enthusiasm and maybe just charisma too. So that's kind of the Gryffindor type. I tend to use the word entertainer type in the sense that they're very fun to be around. Like, they can crack jokes. It depends, you know, like not everybody is a comedian, but, you know, being able to read an audience, being able to react. Like, I think a lot of famous comedians would fall into the Gryffindor camp, if I had to guess. So, obviously, the Gryffindor is the complete opposite of the Ravenclaw, right? Because the Ravenclaw is the thinker type. They're usually going to be more quiet. So, what's cool about this is I think this type is slower to react because they're very, very detail-oriented and sometimes overly analytical, that it can work against them. So, that's kind of the main difference there. Yeah, you say you're the lazy type. So what I would tell people, because, you know, like, even Harry Potter and Hogwarts Legacy aside, like, if you want to figure out which one of these four you are, you know, what I would say is, like, think of how you behave on the first day of, like, school, like, in the past, or the first day on the job. Like, if you start a new job, how you behave when you are introduced to other people for the first time. Like, how do you behave in a new social situation where you don't know the people around you? Are you the first person to, like, greet others, or do you sit back and wait for them to come to you? I think, like, these, I don't know. It's like, I'm pretty sure the Gryffindor types are the ones that go out and start, like, introducing themselves. Do you ever play COD? No, I'm not a big COD person. I won't say I don't like. I don't play a lot of first-person shooters. I just never really liked them that much. I never really cared for the genre. I'll play them. I just don't really care to play them. It's like, they're not gonna be on my short list of games that I buy. Like, I don't have Modern Warfare 2. I never even had, like, the original Modern Warfare 2. I mean, the most recent first-person shooter that I've played is either Halo Infinite or that free-to-play Gundam first-person shooter that we did feature on the Intel Arc live stream that I did. Yeah, but when you said COD, I was thinking of, like, a multiplayer first-person shooter. Yeah, that's true. Quake 2 is a first-person shooter, but, you know, that's like a very old-school game. It's also a single-player game. Quake 2 is really good. I mean, it has good puzzles. You're Gryffindor after 3 beers and Slytherin after 10 beers. Well, the thing is, everyone's a little bit of all of them. But there's always like a primary one. There's always like a dominant one that you default to. Like, I call it your default temperament. And there's only ever one default temperament for every person. Like in my case, okay, if you guys had to guess, I won't say what I am. I'll have you guys guess what I am out of these four. I know which one I am, but I'll see what people think I am based off of how I am on the channel, and then I'll reveal it at the end. But you guys tell me, like, which one of these four do you guys think I am? I mean, you guys have been watching a couple of my live streams. I think it's pretty clear, but maybe it's not clear. Maybe you'll surprise me. But I think like me, I'm pretty cut and dry. Like, it's pretty easy to tell which one of the four I am. Because not only do I know which one I am, personality-wise, but I took the test. I took the Harry Potter test, and the result I got actually lined up with what I am. So I was actually happy about that. Joel says Ravenclaw. Brian says Raven. Puffin thinks Gryffindor. That is very interesting because Gryffindor and Ravenclaw are actual complete opposites. That's why they're diagonal from each other. Okay, so that's... You guys are the three that have been in the chat most of the time, so I'm gonna go ahead and say, well, okay, maybe Mr. You know what salesperson needs to vote. But so far, if it's a tie between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor, that's gonna be really weird considering those two are polar opposites. That's very strange. But you know what? The more I think about it, though, the more I can understand why you guys are guessing those two and not the other two. Puffin thinks Gryffindor. But what about Mr. Vaccine Salesperson? Vaccine Salesperson of the you-know-what. Okay, well, either AFK or doesn't want to answer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and, well, snake oil salesman, yeah. Well, I'm just gonna go ahead and answer it. So what I actually am is Ravenclaw. So I am a thinker type, and you guys could probably guess that by the content on the channel. So obviously, you know, thinker types are very analytical. So I'm the type of person that really, really likes the details on something. Like, for instance, we were talking about hardware specs, right? Like, we're talking about, like, the hardware specs for the game. But even before that, we were talking about, like, the difference between Alder Lake and Raptor Lake, and why one of them, like, why Raptor Lake E-cores actually matter. So, yeah. But yeah, so I'm a thinker type, but I can understand why Puffin guessed Gryffindor, because if you're somebody on YouTube, you know, trying to grow your channel, typically, who are the most successful people in media? They're the entertainer personality type, which is basically the sanguine, aka Gryffindor. So I can understand why, you know, someone would guess that I'm a Gryffindor just because I have a YouTube channel and I'm trying to build up an audience and stuff. And Gryffindors are tailor-made. They're the most talented in that area. You know, they tend to have more charisma than the average person. They tend to be more brave and outspoken. They tend to be adventurous, whatever, very talkative, heart of the party, that sort of thing. So, you know, when I do my YouTube videos, you guys can tell, like, I have a very cut and dry, very detailed format. It's not very flashy and entertaining or anything, right? So it's obviously not, it's not aiming for that sort of approach, right? Like the way I have crafted my YouTube channel. It's not really going for the whole, like, telling jokes every 5 minutes. And basically, I'm not trying to be like an Asmongold or any of those type of Twitch personalities that are really funny to listen to every now and then. So Joel's also Ravenclaw. Puffin, and I can actually tell, Joel, I can guess that you're Ravenclaw also because of like the stuff in the Discord too about the details. Like I can also tell by the questions about like, or the comparisons with Arc, the path tracing, that sort of thing. That's more of like a very analytical detail, like all the kind of like, give me the numbers, give me the details, the nitty gritty, all that kind of stuff. That's definitely more like a Ravenclaw's personality type. Puffin type chose Gryffindor plus the GPUs. You chose Gryffindor. Well, you voted Gryffindor, but like, what does the GPUs have to do with the? I'm not sure what the GPUs have to do with Gryffindor. Like, I'm not sure what the GPUs. I'm really confused by the GPUs. Like, are you suggesting that a 7900 XT is a sanguine? Like, I'm not sure where that's going. I didn't know GPUs had personalities and temperaments. Maybe they do. Maybe they do with all this AI hardware that they're trying to bolt onto them, like tensor cores and whatever AMD did with their Xilinx acquisition. Yeah, so I would assume that most people that watch my content are probably also going to be Ravenclaws because my content is very heavy detail oriented, and I think that that's going to draw that kind of audience more so than the other types. You consider buying so many graphics cards to be very brave. Maybe they are assigning Lisa Sue and Jensen to one of these. Okay, well, if you want me to evaluate them, I'll tell you what they are. I know what they are. So Lisa Sue and Jensen Wong are definitely Slytherin. Well, okay, I know for a fact Jensen Wong is a Slytherin. Lisa Sue is a little bit harder to guess because Lisa Sue, I can see her being a Ravenclaw, but the fact that she's a CEO is typically going to be a Slytherin because the thing is, to be a successful CEO, you have to be able to make accurate decisions, but you have to make your decisions relatively quick. You don't have like 5 months to develop or to make up your mind on something, right? Like shareholders, the board members, they all expect you to have your ducks in an order ahead of time. So I kind of think that both Lisa Sue and Jensen are Slytherin. Like, if I had to guess, I would say they're both Slytherin. There's a reason why most leaders, not all of them, but leaders tend to also be narcissistic. I'm not suggesting that they're narcissistic. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that when you have the controlling personality type, that tends to propel you naturally into that leadership role, and then you eventually get to the upper levels of the management chain, and hence that's how you end up as CEO one day, right? Like you do your job, and you have to be fast paced, because being fast paced and also being smart and cunning, because Slytherin is also smart and cunning, that is how you basically move ahead of people who are like Ravenclaws or Hufflepuff and other types, right? Like you're faster paced than them. You can make a decision on something, and your decision making is also relatively accurate. It's not like you're just blind, randomly guessing and getting it right. There's a certain level of intelligence behind being the controller, aka Slytherin personality type. So it's not like just because someone's a Ravenclaw, that doesn't mean that they're the only one that's smart in the room. It's not like these other three can't be smart. They can all be smart, right? Like intelligence is relative. Like there's different levels of it, and there's different types of intelligence too. So yeah, they're definitely Slytherin. They have to be. Most people in upper management are Slytherin. That's just the way that humans will naturally organize into that kind of structure. based off of personality type. So what's kind of scary is when you think about it, you can evaluate like someone at a very early age and figure out what type of personality they are, and you can almost kind of predict like their life outcome based off of their personality type, because that kind of steers people to certain careers, you know, like people who end up in Slytherin, you know, they're the ones that can probably end up being CEO one day of a company. That's just how it is, and that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean that the other three can't be CEO. It just means that they would have to flex so much more outside their comfort zone, meaning the amount of effort that a Hufflepuff, in particular Hufflepuff, because they're like the complete opposite of Slytherin. Like if a Hufflepuff was a CEO of a company, like the amount of flex that they would have to do to force themselves to be a Slytherin, to be a more controller type, it's a lot more stressful on that individual. It's not that they can't do it. It's just going to take a lot more effort on their part because it's not a natural state of being for them to be in all the time. So, like, you guys can see, like, me. Like, I'm out here on YouTube, but I'm a Ravenclaw. It's like I'm typically someone who is more slower to make a decision. I'm quieter, usually, in a social setting, but I'm having to flex and push myself more into my opposite to be more of an entertainer type, to be more of somebody who can, entertain an audience and retain an audience and grow an audience ultimately. So you can be what you're not naturally. It just takes a lot of effort. It just takes more effort. Say genetics play a bigger role in someone's future in terms of success than. Yeah, but that's part of the whole like nature versus nurture argument. Man, now this stream has gone completely away from technology, and now it's all like heavy on like the psychology and sociology talking points. I don't know how we got from like Hogwarts Legacy PC specs to this. Like I don't know where it went from there, but yeah, I mean it's true. Someone's genetics do play a big role, because your genetics can ultimately determine your average intelligence level, or like your baseline intelligence level is basically set from your genetics, and then how you use that, and how you leverage like the nurture aspect of your environment. That's ultimately what leads to your success. But I do think that some of that also does shape somebody's personality, right? Like your genetics and your environment at an early age do play a big role in shaping someone's personality, which will then ultimately help them in terms of how their life plays out in terms of their career and their personal life, etc. So yeah, very interesting stream. I had no idea that this would ever be a thing on one of my live streams, like talking about like the 4 Harry Potter houses and then like over analyzing them into their like personality or temperament types. Base temperament types, I think is what this is called. Very interesting stuff though. But very, very mentally exhausting for me. Like, I could talk about, computer hardware for 3 hours straight, but this is way too taxing on my mental capacity. I think I'm pretty much maxed out at this point. But I will be playing the game. I'll just be streaming the game. We're going to stream it with different graphics cards. And I'm going to be a Ravenclaw. So I'm going to be playing a new game as a Ravenclaw. And if I do New Game Plus or whatever, if I want all the endings, I'm guessing I'm going to have to play as the other 3. So, you know what? Until ARC was listed. ARC is listed on the recommended settings for 1080p. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's always good to try to push yourself outside your comfort zone, right? See what you're actually capable of, because you'd be surprised. This topic is using too much memory. Yeah, my RAM in my head is basically maxed out right now. The Intel Arc. What's the Intel Arc A7? What's the LE? Limited. Oh, yeah, you just mean the reference card. Runs the new. Yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in that too. What I'm gonna do is I might do another stream where I connect the other PC to my capture card and I play the game off of that other. Basically, do a dual PC stream. But that won't allow me to encode video using Intel's Arc though. But I do plan to do some different, because I feel like a game like this that requires such high specs, like to encode the video and have it look good on stream, it's gonna require not just a good encoder, but it's probably gonna require a lot of bandwidth too, to make this game look good on stream, because it's probably gonna have a lot of there's gonna be a lot of foliage and stuff. It's gonna be one of those things where it's gonna be harder to run or harder to display with good quality. So it'll be interesting to see how that AMD encoder handles this game, and also to retest the NVIDIA one, because I haven't touched my NVIDIA card in a while. Like the last time, and I haven't touched the 3090 Ti in a long time actually. In fact, I think the last time I was using this card was before I had this card. Yeah, that's right. I took this card out. This card's currently in storage. The 3080 Ti was the last NVIDIA card that I've used recently, and that was to film the review of the XT and the XTX, because I didn't use the 3090 Ti. I didn't use the 3090 Ti for that video because the test rig that I was using didn't have the power supply with the connector, and I didn't want to keep on using the NVIDIA this thing, disconnecting and reconnecting the adapter thing, because it's supposedly you're not supposed to connect and disconnect this thing more than 30 times. And I think I've already swapped out my NVIDIA GPU at least 9 or 10 times already, in the last year. So it's I'm gonna try to reduce the amount of times that I have to use this. So it's I gotta use the PSU that has that cable. So, but for the 3080, that one, the 3080 Ti technically is actually worse, because that one doesn't allow me to use the actual cable. Yeah, it's very annoying. Yeah, it's annoying because the little clip is so small. I'm always afraid that when I press on it, that I'm gonna press too hard on it and it might actually crack the plastic, that tiny little plastic tab in there. So that's always a little bit concerning. So yeah, I don't like it. I'm actually, at first I was thinking, when I got the Red Devil, I was thinking, why didn't AMD just go with the new power cable like NVIDIA? Because it would have made for a much cleaner look, because it would just have that one cable. But then I thought, oh yeah, no, because they'd have to they'd have to include one of these, and these things are annoying. So I'm actually glad that AMD went with the dual 8-pin on the XT, and then for the AIB cards, the triple 8-pin for the XTX. I think that was definitely better. In fact, I don't know, maybe NVIDIA next time around doesn't use this. The problem is the AIB 4080s are shipping with these, and I'm thinking why are they doing that when the 3090 Ti, the AIBs were literally EVGA, all their custom coolers were using the triple 8-pin. So it's why can't they do that with the 4080 AIB? I mean, whatever. It's okay, they want to deal with this. Because this just reminds me of how, like, GPUs used to, a long time ago, GPUs used to ship with the Molex adapter. Like, you could run Molex to 6-pin or something. And I never had to do that, but it's like, having to actually use the adapter that ships with the GPU is not a fun experience. So, alright guys, well I think that's going to be it for this stream. Really did not expect to have like this whole discussion on psychological temperaments and have that somehow linked to Hogwarts Legacy, which is like a Harry Potter type game, although it doesn't actually feature Harry Potter. It's supposed to take place like 100 years prior to Harry Potter, which will be really interesting, which means there's going to be no Fantastic Beasts characters, no Dumbledore, none of those people. But it's pretty hyped, the game. Like, I'm going to be playing a ton of this game when it comes out. Pretty much February for me is mostly going to be Hogwarts Legacy. And then maybe some other game that comes out later in the month. But yeah, expect to see a lot of content on Hogwarts Legacy on this channel when that game comes out in only like 3 weeks or so. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thanks everybody for watching. It was a very interesting stream, at least the second half of it was at least. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.